Spoilers ahead. This is your one and only warning. Leave now or forever hold your peace, because we're shooting blindly in these streets. And now, a Japan Time Podcast special presentation.
What is going on, everybody? Rogers Base here, and welcome to a very special edition of the Japan Time Podcast. Obviously, we don't have a show this week. Shofu's out of town. A lot of people are busy. I actually just came back from out of town, but we've been saying for a long time that we were going to do this, and that is our SPOILERCAST roundtable discussion for The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I am joined by Viram.
Good evening, everybody.
McDareth.
What's up, everyone?
Mike.
Hey.
And special guest, no longer regular, but comes on whenever he wants. Always welcome here. Zeph. What's going on, Zeph?
Hello. This is the first Zelda game that I played the whole way through since Majora's Mask, so I figured
Really?
I could talk about it. Yeah, I really liked it.
Wow. I mean, so where should we start with this, honestly? Because I feel like we could just jump straight into spoilers.
There's so much.
At the very beginning, because there is a lot to talk about. So real quick, if you have not yet beaten The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, we're just going to say this just to be safe. If you have not yet beaten the game, which means beating Ganondorf, do not listen to this. Go beat Ganondorf, go beat the game, come back to it, and then listen to this later. It's not going anywhere, but we certainly don't want to be the ones to spoil you on the end of the game.
Yeah, spoiler and disclaimer.
Yeah, that's it. Now, with
Look,
that being
no matter
said,
how many times you say it, someone's gonna cry.
so where should we start?
Maybe like gameplay mechanic. I don't know, man.
I think like
the game is huge.
Everything goes so in depth.
I feel like the
yeah.
biggest thing
Every
like
little
going
thing.
into this game that like a lot of people had a question about was, how do you guys feel about this as like a direct sequel? Like direct, like using the same map direct.
Which I guess is interesting because, Zeph, you just mentioned the last one that you played all the way through was Majora's Mask, which happened to be the last time it was a full-blown direct sequel to any of the other games. So I do find that kind of interesting. I mean, in terms of what the game ended up being, I ended up loving this far more than I thought I was going to. And that's not to say that, like, I don't absolutely love Breath of the Wild, because I do. I think prior to Tears of the Kingdom, I would have said like Breath of the Wild would probably be like one of my top 10 favorite games of all time, and was kind of up there with Wind Waker as my favorite Zelda game. And now, where we are now, I could pretty safely say not only is Tears of the Kingdom my favorite Zelda game, I feel like Tears of the Kingdom is like one of my favorite games, period, of all time now. Like top 3 up there with Super Metroid and Chrono Trigger. I love everything about it. I love the story. I love the new gameplay mechanics. I love the exploration. It's just, yeah, it's excellent, man, all the way around.
I actually went into it expecting to drop it in like a week because I didn't like Breath of the Wild at all. I don't like that game still to this day. But Tears of the Kingdom additions feel way more natural to use, and just everything feels just better. The Ascend is so much better than that stupid ice block. The rewind power, the fact that you can use it in combat makes it better than pretty much all the other powers except for like stasis. Yeah.
Have you guys actually used that in combat? Like messed with it and tested and done stuff? Because
you can throw a weapon and then like stasis or rewind it.
Yeah.
The best was like the fire boomerang. So when you have the fire boomerang, it makes that awesome fire swirl effect, and then you rewind it, and then like you get a character to get towards the middle, and it just keeps rewinding and smacking them in the face.
To me, so to me at least, there are very few games that are direct sequels and also direct improvements, and I think this game is one.
Yeah, that was the surprise.
Like, it's just like everything is better, I think.
Yeah, that was what surprised me, because I was excited for the game, but not super excited because I was so worried that Breath of the Wild was like, the big thing in Breath of the Wild was that sense of discovery. But how do you do that again in a sequel? And they just found so many new ways to do that. Like you said, this replaces Breath of the Wild to me. I think this is like definitely the best Zelda.
Oh yeah,
I can actually see myself replaying this too.
See, I think that's the only thing that I kind of differ on, where I was in a weird position where I wanted to stream a lot of the game, obviously, like the main story points, but I had just gone on a trip to Italy on the right as I was halfway through the game at like the halfway point. And so I couldn't stream it. So what I did was I actually went back and I played Breath of the Wild again because I had never done Master Mode. And I ended up beating the whole thing like relatively quickly because I'd done it over the course of my trip. So I think I did it over what it would have been like a week and a half, 2 weeks or something. And I've talked about this on Touch Base as well. But the thing about that game is that I went back to it having now played Tears of the Kingdom, and it didn't ruin the experience for me at all. It just felt like almost like a beta test for what this game was. It feels like a simpler, more concise version of Tears of the Kingdom. And while like I know you had just mentioned, oh, I'm looking forward to like going back and playing this again, I honestly don't see a situation in which I would want to play this all the way through again, because a lot of the things that I really loved about it, like the boss battles, you can play those again in the underground. I feel like the story stuff you can re-experience just from the memories, and the game itself, like you take so much time gathering up Zonite and getting materials and getting good weapons and doing all this other stuff that like I don't ever want to delete my save file for this. I want to keep my save file. I'd rather they just
Maybe
make
an update will like add. I don't know.
Maybe or like a new game.
Like,
plus or
New Game
something that
Plus.
Do we have is Master Mode a thing yet or no?
Not
No.
yet.
Not yet. No,
Okay, so if they when they inevitably add it, maybe they'll be like, here's an extra save file for Master Mode specifically, and that's how you activate Master Mode.
and I would do that, but I feel like because I put so many hours into this,
Yeah, I don't
already,
want to delete my save file. I had too much fun.
Yeah, I ended up putting in like 150 or something in Breath of the Wild by the end of my time with Breath of the Wild, which included my recent playthrough of Master Mode and my initial time playing the game. So total, my game clock was like around that marker, and that's what I'm already at with Tears of the Kingdom, like now. So, like I said, I don't really want to lose any of that progress moving forward into the future. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like the big thing with this game as opposed to Breath of the Wild. Because I'm personally not like, I don't think this game just straight up replaces Breath of the Wild for me. I still think even though they share a lot of the same like systems and the world and everything.
Well, definitely has a different atmosphere.
Yeah, they are very much different games in the same way that like Ocarina and Majora are different games.
Definitely.
Or even like all the Zeldas.
Now that you're mentioning it, in Breath of the Wild, everyone did complain about the soundtrack, and I noticed so much more music in this one. It's like because the world is more alive, I guess.
And the music is just unbelievable. Like there are so many good remixes and throwbacks to old classic Zelda themes. Oh,
the thing that like solidified my opinion of it, I was still like, eh, and then I got to the Wind Temple boss, and the music started playing, and I was like, okay.
Oh yes.
And it plays the Rito Village.
It's like a remix of like the Rito theme and the fucking.
And like it's like a combination of themes.
Yeah,
it's like Rivali's theme.
Yeah, Rivali's melody kicked in.
Yeah,
and the whole lead up to that dungeon where you're like platforming in the sky is super cool.
Yeah, I think the actual getting to the dungeon part of almost every dungeon was really good.
Yeah, I agree. I liked even I think after talking to people, a lot of people said that they thought their least favorite dungeon was the water one, but I actually really liked the
water one.
The climb up
I found
to it
that
was
one
great.
to be the easiest. I did it in like 15 minutes.
Oh yeah, it was very easy. Yeah.
It was simplified in a good way. I feel like so many times, like prior to this, I would say my favorite water temple was probably Ancient Cistern from Skyward Sword.
Is this also like the first one we don't actually go underwater in?
Yes, and that's what I was going to bring up, is I feel like having the water level changes, but not having to physically go underwater and swim to go to different rooms.
Having, like, the bubbles.
And also being able to change it like on each individual island where you're not raising and lowering the whole thing, so you have to backtrack a bunch, made it super fun. And I loved, too, how subversive the boss was for that one, where you've got these giant badass things at the end of all the other temples, and this one, it's just like this goofy little guy.
It's like literally
Muck the Rock,
like a Mario Sunshine boss in Zelda.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, totally. Or like a Splatoon boss, even
that. Yeah. Well, those games have like eerily similar aesthetics, and they haven't done anything with them.
It's almost
weird.
like they're developed by the same company. Wild.
To bounce off of that point, something that I also found was really cool was that when you go down into the depths and you go to those equivalent spots in the temples, you find depths versions of those bosses.
Oh, is that where they're located?
Yeah,
I just found them randomly.
In case you guys,
that was a connection. Okay.
To like add on to that, in case you're unaware, the topography of the like underground is just the overworld in reverse or like flipped.
Yep. And
Yeah.
figuring that out was so much fun too upon trying to find the other shrines, because I think I got every tower first, obviously, like on the main map. And then I tried to fill out the rest of the underground map, and there were certain places where I'm like, I have no idea where a light route is. And then when my chat brought up to me that like, oh yeah, the light routes are correspondent to the shrines that are on the surface, and even like the names of the light routes names are like reverse.
It's like the shrine name backwards.
Is there a naming convention to the shrines this time? Because like in Breath of the Wild, weren't they scrambled English? Like one of the shrines was called Aonuma.
I don't think there's anything in this one that's like named after Iwata or something like that. I think it's just they're kind of.
I think that that spirit animal is dedicated to him, isn't it?
There you go. Well, I knew there was an NPC that was.
It's
The
big
mountain,
thing.
Satori Mountain.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
The big Satori is related to
Right.
like obviously the name.
Yeah, but I feel like the whole thing in the
I
underground
actually never
and like
caught that.
the joint of the discovery between not only figuring out that like, okay, a shrine could be directly above where this light route is, or like a light route is right under the shrine, and like going back and forth between the two surfaces, and then all of a sudden being like, you know what, I'm kind of bored of doing this, I'm gonna go do something else, and actually having something meaningful to do on the side. I feel like when that kind of thing happened in Breath of the Wild to me, I just sort of like took a little bit of a break from the game for a little bit. I didn't really like go explore and do something else. Whereas I feel like there's a lot of really good, meaningful side quests in this one. Like the whole section in Lurelin Village where it's a giant boss fight and you have to like fend off the pirates, I thought was so cool.
I'm surprised I found myself doing side quests. I usually don't because it's always like collect this, but like I really liked what's his name? Penn?
Oh yeah, Big
Penn,
News Morgan from One Piece, totally.
I love his little thing where you gotta go find mysteries.
Right.
And that's like
I
quest
haven't
is so
even met that
good
character.
because it's an excuse to get you to go around all the stables.
Totally.
Yeah.
And something else that was told to me,
fairies, and it's like a domino effect.
like the difference between the top and like the overworld and the depths. The location of every stable in the depths is a Lionel.
Oh yeah, someone just told me that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's where the Lionels. I didn't see a single Lionel in the game until I was like in the room before the final fight before game.
Yeah.
Because they normally hide them, so if you're like on the road, you won't see them. You gotta like run off to like the sides.
They're way off to the side more because I guess in Breath of the Wild they were more able to run free and do whatever the fuck.
Yeah, I feel like that's the big thing with the exploration with these two games is that like I feel like in this game I'm constantly drawn to like the next big thing that I don't really like explore in the same way I explored in Breath of the Wild. Like in Breath of the Wild, I used to love just like roaming in a field for like half an hour and seeing what I stumbled across. Whereas this, it feels like there's so many things in this distance, like asking for me to come over there, like a sky island or a hole in the ground or something like that.
I don't know
So,
about like yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's
There's a lot of
the
little
holes
landmarks in
around
the
are
game.
so noticeable, and the shrines from far, or not the shrines, the towers from far away are super noticeable. Like I'll catch them out of the corner of the eye and on the mountain.
Yeah, and even just like the falling rocks, like every time a rock fell, I'm just like, well, I'm not gonna not go up into the sky.
Yeah.
So yeah, I spent a lot less time in this game just like exploring the surface.
Yeah, because also exploring the surface, it gets to the point where you're so comfortable with the game systems, you make an air bike.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that in the last bit while I was finishing it.
Like the mechanics of Fuse, I think, is also the other thing that makes me really love this, because I feel like just as you guys were talking about discoverability and like exploring the world, I think that added like a whole nother level of that feeling of discovering something for the first time from Breath of the Wild, but it actually directly affects gameplay. It's not just like finding a location, because the amount of cool things that I've made or that I've fused, or the amount of like optimized things that I saw people post online, like that air bike. I think everybody who's ever played this game now has one of those 2-fan air bikes with the little steering wheel on it, because it's so useful. You can just take it everywhere. It takes your little zonite.
For fused weapons, I'm gonna ask you guys after. I want to know what like your favorite fused weapon combinations are. But anything that attaches to like potentially like the best thing would be like, I guess, okay, so like I got a silver horn or something, the highest possible damage thing, and then you get
Sure.
you get a sword where it's wet damage up, and then you just use side
one
on
of the
shield,
Zora
and you're good to
yeah.
go.
Oh yeah, that is always good.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
think
I
about
thought
that.
this-
Yeah, I was
I don't
like,
know,
how
in
can I
terms
make
of-
myself wet? I forgot his ability would do it.
Yeah, you just do it with
He just
side
puts you
on.
in a bubble.
Sidon's ability.
I do love
Or
the.
you could also
the
just throw a
Lizphos
splash
tails.
fruit on the ground.
Like the Lizphos tails that basically turn things into whips, and you have the
Yeah,
really
that's
really
just
long
cool.
range and stuff. Like if you attach one of those tails to something that's a super strong weapon, or like for me, I was attaching to like a really strong broadsword, and then I would just swing the thing around, and it essentially made this giant straight line that went like across both sides of the screen, and I would
Didn't-
just spin and pick everything out and kill it
I think
instantly. It was so much fun.
Lizalfos, I think, give the most unique things because they give you that. You can make a katana and you can make a scythe, but
Yeah.
they don't
Right.
play any different.
That's right. Scythe is
Yeah.
also cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the scythe
I
and
liked
katana.
quite simply just being able to make like rods with like very simple
Bro, magic is fucked up.
apparatus of some kind, and just slapping like a ruby or a topaz on, and you just get a nice electric staff, and it just has a lot of good utility like that.
Why?
But then
Why did you throw? So I don't know if this was in Breath of the Wild because like I said, I didn't play it that much. But why can I throw fire at an ice enemy and they fucking vanish?
Oh,
It's
dude,
fucked.
yeah, it's the same in Breath of the Wild if I recall correctly.
I love to like I don't know if you guys did any of it, like the little amiibo stuff where you scan the amiibos in and you get different materials. And
Yeah.
I had a bunch of the old like Breath of the Wild ones that I was scanning in. And so really early on in the game, I got those ancient blades where if you, it's like the Guardian laser essentially, where like you attach it to something and it one shots whatever you end up shooting it at. And there was a moment where I was exploring the underground area leading into Hyrule Castle, and there was a Lionel that just kept shooting one little arrow at me, and I kept trying to climb up this wall and just I didn't feel like I needed to kill him. I was strong enough at this point, but this little arrow was just annoying me so much, so I break out that ancient blade and I just like teleport him away and make him disappear in one shot.
I
And
saw
it
you
was
made
so
the Metal
much
Gear.
fun. Oh my god, the Metal Gear was so awesome. So originally someone posted, I forgot what the name of this Twitter account is, I'll try to find it.
It was
but
Japanese. It's hard to remember.
it's a Japanese
Yeah.
Twitter account, and this person was remaking famous video game and anime mechs. And anyone who follows Japan Time knows I'm a massive fan of Metal Gear. And so this person created Metal Gear Rex in
Yeah.
Tears of the Kingdom. And it wasn't even like that expensive Zonite wise. It was only like 60 something Zonite. And you could create literally a working Metal Gear where it had like the laser cannon on the top of it. It shot the electric cannon weapons. It crawled around with the reverse cooking pot Zonite things as its feet. You could plant it with the stakes. And so yeah, literally at the end of the game, during the fight with all of the like the minions of Ganon, before you actually do the Ganondorf fight, I created and auto built the Metal Gear again and just carried it around. It was blowing everybody up. It was so much fun.
Yeah, I think could do some serious
Yeah,
damage.
Oh, it
The
was
Twitter
awesome.
is
Yeah.
at Uran120.
Thank you very much.
I think the
Yeah,
coolest
they've
thing,
done
because
amazing things.
a lot of the Twitter clips from like Breath of the Wild is look how much we can break the game. What Tears of the Kingdom is like, look at all the cool shit we can make.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't. That's the other thing too, right? It's like that doesn't break the game. It's like it's built into it in a way where you're naturally supposed to experiment and do cool things.
My favorite,
I'm
and
looking
I
at
also
it
remember the
right
person
right
who
now. This
made it.
person did a flying common writer. Hold on, I'll link this in the Japan Time thing, and then we could have Vanilla splice it in. But
I'll
look
be
at
back
this.
in a minute.
I mean, this is like unbelievable. They made a flying, like Kamen Rider mech thing using rockets on its feet. It's just incredible. Like, who even thinks of making stuff like this? It's unreal.
Yeah, this game, even more so than like Breath of the Wild, was already a game that kind of encapsulated the idea of freedom, and this game somehow manages to ramp it up even further. I mean,
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild was a game that, for many like modern developers, created the new open world blueprint. And the fact that Tears of the Kingdom manages to evolve on that in such a substantial way, in almost every way, I think is
Yeah.
kind of crazy.
Especially
Yeah.
because we just got Elden Ring last year. And I feel like the last time that we had a really big open world thing that everyone unanimously was like, we love this, this is game changing, prior to Elden Ring, I feel like was Breath of the Wild. And then Elden Ring came out, and I remember the discussions that people were having where it's like, how are they possibly going to top Elden Ring, or how are they going to be able to make a game that's like as beloved as that? You know, in a post Elden Ring world, Breath of the Wild might not necessarily cut it for everyone, and they just managed to do it with Tears of the Kingdom, which I think is just incredible.
Having Tears of the Kingdom is definitely amazing for that, because like even as influential as Breath of the Wild was, I feel like a lot of developers just like did not do what Breath of the Wild did. Like they saw Breath of the Wild and they were like, oh yeah, climbing and paragliders, this is why this is successful. Let's just put a paraglider and a climbing mechanic in our game. And that's all we're gonna do.
Field.
That's it.
And grass, yeah.
Started, yeah.
Like none of them capitalized on like what was truly special about Breath of the Wild was that freedom.
And again, it's not just the freedom of exploration, but it's the freedom of actually like building your weapons out and building your mechs out, or just creating characters. Like one of the other things on that URAN page, they were remaking enemies from Nausicaa, like the classic Ghibli movie. And yeah, and you could literally just do whatever you want. They don't need to be weapons. Or I saw like there was another cool thing that someone built that was a fishing boat that doesn't take very many like different Zonai pieces, but basically you create a like square net in the front of your boat, and then you attach one of those little lightning things to it, and then when you tilt your boat down, it electrifies and auto kills anything that's floating in the water, and so you can drive the boat around and collect Octorok balloons or collect fish. Insane. And in the matter of like 5 minutes, you can collect a whole bunch of stuff. And as soon as I saw that on Twitter, I'm like, well, I got to build one of these. And it brought me back into the game, even though I'd already beaten it by that point. It's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, something that I just remembered with regards to the side quests. I think part of the reason why side quests in this game feel particularly satisfying is because, kind of like with some of the Xenoblade side quests, they have sort of chains to them where there's a constant sort of knock-on effect where you do part of a side quest and it influences something else, and then you move on to another part, and so it feels substantial just going through almost any side quest series in this game. And
the side adventures.
They feel like they have a big impact on the world around, and I think that personally for me, regardless of like what you're doing in the side quests, because a lot of the time it's relatively basic gameplay things that you're actually doing.
For sure.
But for me, it's all about how these quests affect the world around you, and just like what they mean for like building up characters and relationships and stuff like that. And I think this game does a really, really good job with that in particular.
I think on the topic of characters in general too, I really do love the cast of this one, because like I loved the cast of Breath of the Wild as well, but I feel like the choice to age up Tulin, right, and have him actually be like a real warrior, and then keep like fan favorites. You've still got Saigon and Riju and
the glow up for Riju and Yunobo.
Oh my God, they're
insane.
So cool. The Yunobo,
they're so cool now.
It was like such a cool little take on things where he's possessed by the weird like the meat that was in that cave, and you fight Yunobo, and the little kid is like, that's not actually Yunobo. Like you have to go easy on him. He doesn't know what he's doing right now. It was so much. Or like even the Purah, obviously Purah's glow up. Everybody was thirsting after Purah. You've got I guess the only thing in terms of characters that I would say is maybe like a minor disappointment for me is at the end of every major temple, the first 4 at least, you get kind of the same cutscene over again.
Yeah, that was really lame.
Sages, and none of them ever take their masks off, so you never actually get to know the sages from the past in the way that you got to know the previous champions in Breath of the Wild.
My buddy and I talked about this, and he said he thinks that like the reason they might have done that is because the champions in Breath of the Wild heavily overshadowed the new champions. So maybe they were trying to like. I think they definitely did.
I think they definitely did.
Like I remember, like, new champion people cared about in Breath of the Wild was Sidon.
Maybe.
Yeah, pretty much. Because I remember Sidon, I completely forgot the Goron and Gerudo ones, and I remembered Teba, but. And then Tulin's there instead. But like all the actual champions, I remember them at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I think
I
it was
love
like,
that.
hey, you should care about the characters that are alive now, not these dudes that have been dead for thousands of years. I think that was maybe the play.
Right.
I think it helps a
I mean,
ton that they
actually
their
being-
spirits actually go with you. Can adventure with you. So it's
Right.
not just like you call them
right.
once, they pop up, do a move, and disappear. Like they're just there with you.
That's
Roger, you can ignore
cool
this.
and
I'm
also
just
a little
rating
bad.
Annoying.
I have to stop
Yeah.
for a second.
That's like, I think one of the
Of course.
things where it's like, I think this game, for the most part, is a step up from Breath of the Wild in like almost every way.
Yeah.
But like the sage powers, not it compared
I
to
agree.
how they were implemented in Breath of the Wild.
Simply because of Rivali's Gale. Rivali's Gale was so
Well, I
useful.
think it's because
No, it's not. It's not about the
Toolings
ability
is
itself.
just
It's
too
how
good.
they're implemented.
I think Toolings is just too good. I don't care about the other ones.
Yeah, Tolan's is amazing.
And Tooling is just too good. He's headshotting every enemy.
Horizontal Rivali's Gale. When you're flying through the air and you do Tulins and it pushes you forward, and then you could just get that extra little bit of a glide to go to another Sky Island or something. I mean, for me personally, I turned off Unobos and Rejues after a few times of using them. Like I didn't just have them the whole time. I would reactivate them if I know I needed to use them. But Sidons I found really useful in combat, especially if you have like the wet weapons. And obviously Tulins was really good too. And then obviously the Spirit Temple at the ending when you get Mineru and you're able to use the little mech thing. By that point, I had so many other cool things that I had auto-built that I didn't really use the mech, and I turned that one off too. Because I kept accidentally jumping on the back of it and not wanting to do that mid-fight.
Yeah, that's the only part I feel like was annoying is they definitely should have just put those on buttons and not have you run up and talk to them because it just gets in the way sometimes.
Yeah. You're in a super busy fight, and then all of a sudden, you're jumping on the back of this thing.
I'm trying to pick up a bunch of items that I just got from a boss, and Tulin comes over and blows them all away.
And on the topic of that too, we're mentioning the bosses and the boss fights and the combat and all the different abilities. I also feel like the field bosses in this one are a huge step up from Breath of the Wild too.
The construct like
gosh.
Golem might be my favorite fight in the game.
The Gleeoks, like those Gleeok fights, even the first bare bones one that I ran into after like finishing the first temple was an ice Gleeok that was up in the mountains on like the western part of it. And dude, I died multiple times the first time that I tried to fight that thing. And then in that final segment when it creates the giant storm and it's sending things down at you from the heavens, and I'm thinking like, how the heck do you beat this? And then you have the realization like, oh, you're supposed to jump onto the thing and then reverse time and then jump back up in the air and then shoot it.
Wait, what?
Was so sick. What do you mean? Wait, what? You didn't beat?
I have not killed a Gleeok yet.
Wait,
So I did it with
I didn't
a
bother.
platform. I built a platform. Like the first time I fought the fire one, he did like that and did a spirit bomb and nuked me. It's like, okay, you know what? And then I just built a platform with rockets and I had an auto build. Every time I just call it the Dragon Killer. Every time they fly up, I build that and just fly up after them immediately.
Nice.
Yeah, so for the next time you fight a Gleeok, then Mike, when you actually want to beat one, during that segment at the end when he starts raining fire down on you or ice cubes or whatever, if you jump on the thing and then rewind it, it'll propel you back up into like where he creates the platforms. And then if you jump off of that, you can slow motion and just basically like shoot all his heads, and then that ends up killing him. But it's a really cool cinematic, awesome way to finish that fight. Yeah.
The King Gleeok's finishing move is so annoying.
Oh my god, the King Gleeok is ridiculous. I didn't even get the chance to beat that until my very, very, very last stream. Because I kept trying to beat it and it just kept killing me. And I'm like, I have to wait. But I knew I didn't want to beat the game without beating one of the King Gleeoks. And I ended up taking out the one that was in the that Coliseum that's in the underground.
Yeah, that's
It's
where
like
I think
Gleeok
most
Nest or
people find
whatever.
it.
Oh, where the
Yeah.
Tunic of the Wild? No. It's something of the Wild is there. I think the Cap of the
It
Wild?
is one of the wild ones. Yeah, it's one of them. Oh, it's so good. Also, you mentioned the Cap of the Wild, like the different armor sets in this one not being tied to amiibos and like actually feeling like you're earning them, where you're either getting you're getting them from like the little treasure maps that you're getting from the sky, or you're doing one of those Coliseum fights with a bunch of Lionels or something. It feels like deserved cool Easter eggs when you finally unlock them. Yeah.
I loved that when I was like exploring around, I found a cave, just like do a side quest. There's a cave, bunch of chests. Like found the chest, and there's a thing in there they didn't want. And it talks about, oh, here's the fierce deity sword and like go get the fierce deity armor. I stopped everything and did that quest immediately.
Yeah,
Dude,
can
it
I
was
just
so-
say, caves might be one of, if not my favorite addition in this game.
Oh yeah, I love them.
I
Yeah.
love caves.
I don't know how the hell they weren't in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's actually a good point. It does feel like something that would have been naturally implemented, but I guess with the time that they spent making the engine for the game the first time around, I guess they just didn't have a chance to do it. But I totally agree. I feel like the caves are great, and I love them using those weird like bubble glow frog things as your marker
Yeah.
for whether or not you've completed it. Because then I'll go into a cave. I'll explore it for like half an hour or something, get lost in it, and then I'll leave. And then if I notice, oh, there's not a check mark on it yet, I'll go like, oh, okay, I can go back and do that eventually and get my little bubble frog. And it's just that added little extra thing to add your completion marker on it. It's just, it's so much fun.
It's just
And they're so
amazing. They
varied.
feel. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying they're so varied, like in terms of
Yeah,
the
exactly.
layout.
A lot of them feel almost like mini dungeons.
Yeah, like especially
Yeah,
that hidden royal entrance or whatever under Tyrell Castle is like super long. That one especially feels like a dungeon.
There's a bunch of the ones in like Death Mountain reminded me so much of the Fire Temple in Skyward Sword.
Yes, totally.
With
Where you're going through the different
the
rooms.
circular minecart thing.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
There was one of those that I randomly like discovered right after I got Yunobo's ability, because then I remembered I had walked by this area that had like a weird colored rock that I couldn't beat. And I went, well, I have Yunobo now, so I'll blow the rocks up. And yeah, I just ended up finding a shrine in there. I was going through like 4 or 5 different rooms, all of which had, like you said, there's like the minecart things around it. The minecarts were also circular around other platforms. So you then had to jump over to these other platforms to then fight a mini boss or something. It was just, it was so much fun. Yeah.
Have any of you done the cave under Satori Mountain?
Remind me
I
of
don't
what's in it.
remember. Yeah.
So you go into the cave and you see the little booble bunny, whatever it's called, and it splits into like multiples of itself, and you have to like chase it through this big maze and find the real one.
I don't think I did
No,
that.
yeah,
No.
I don't think I did that one.
That's probably my favorite cave I've seen so far.
See, I'm a sucker for the pirate ones, like the pirate ones and the treasure runs all down the coast by Lurelin, where you go into those caves and literally they're like pirate ships sitting in the middle, and there's treasure hidden all around, and there's like different rocks that are on different sides, and you can either choose to ascend right up into the boat or ascend onto one of the mountains on the side and like snipe the guys off of the pirate ship. It's so much fun. Or like the treasure ones where the only way to get into them is like you have to blow the whistle and then it opens up the doorway and you have to be on a boat, so there's kind of no other way to access it. Just the best. Also, to answer a question in the chat, Skeleton Youth was asking about the early duplication glitches.
I used to shit out of that.
I never used them once. My entire time playing the game, I never used them once.
The most broken one is normally you have to like jump and then glide, or you jump while you jump off anything, you glide and then you pause and then you hold 5 items and then you press unpause or something like that. And then when you get Mineru, you just you do the same thing except you don't have to jump. You just stand on her.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Is that
That's
still
pretty
in the
funny.
game? Like if I
No,
summon
it's
Mineru?
gone.
Oh, okay. I was gonna be like, then I will go do that right now. I'll go get a bunch of rupees. But yeah, my way playing through the game, I didn't use it. I think it was just because, like, for me, I don't know about you guys. I felt like I always had a surplus of materials to the point where,
The
like,
only
by the
things
end
I
of
was
the game-
doing was like if I needed bombs or something and I had one and I didn't want to mess up.
Sure.
The only issue I had with like the material thing is that I wish that the like rebuild feature didn't pick up the same materials I needed to get more battery,
Yeah.
because I never wanted to use it.
I would just well, I guess because me, I went down to the depths like right away, so I had a ton. So I just started budgeting how much I want to spend on like making stuff and then exploring the depths more and getting more, that kind of stuff.
That's kind of where I was too. I think I found myself just like fighting frocks over and over again to get a bunch of Zonite if I wanted to build a Metal Gear or something like that. But most of the stuff that I would auto build didn't really take that much. It maybe took like 12 or like 20 max. The only one that ever had a lot was, like I said, if you did the Metal Gear, and that was like only 60 something, which again, by that point, like I was exploring a lot of the depths later on. I did most of the stuff on the surface first. And so by the time, I didn't even think I got into the depths until after I'd beaten the first temple. I don't think I even explored it at all until then. And by that point, I was still getting lost because that very first quest where you go to the depths, you have to find Robbie. And it tells you like, oh, he's in this general direction. And I just walked right past him multiple times and ended up accidentally like exploring half the depths before even finishing the quest with Robbie you're supposed to do.
Well, since we're there, I love the depths. Like normally I don't like that kind of like antsy anticipation. Something's there and I know it's there kind of feel. But like the fact that you can bring down like the light bulbs and you're literally carving a path through the darkness, like I love the depths. That was so cool.
Now, were you wasting your bulbs with arrows, or were you just throwing your bulbs?
Arrows. I needed.
Okay,
I needed
because people were yelling at me in my chat saying you're wasting.
I was
your
doing arrows too.
I'm like, no, man, I want the precision.
I was throwing them.
I was using arrows. I wanted exact spots with the big ones, especially.
I needed to see what was over in the distance, so I just fired them.
Good.
I did both because you get a surplus of those bulbs anyway, so I don't mind just chucking a load down. But sometimes when I was in like a high area and I just wanted to be able to see a lot from a distance, then I'd just use an arrow.
Yeah, I feel like obviously from a distance you have to use one. But even like half the time where it was something that was relatively close to where I was, I still didn't end up throwing them. Because what I would find very early on, and I kind of got the hang of it by the ending, but like early on, I would go to throw a light root thing and then I'd end up like tossing a weapon or something. And the weapon would be like near breaking, and then I would accidentally chuck the weapon and it would break. And I'm like, come on. So I just stopped doing it overall. I was like, look, I'll just buy more arrows.
Yeah, that's like one of my biggest gripes with the game is some of the controls aren't super intuitive or really feel that great to use. Like having to re-equip a material on every single individual arrow. Why wasn't there just like a quick redo the one you just did button?
Like a shortcut, like here, keep making fire arrows or something?
Yeah.
Sure. The only thing that I never really got used to in terms of controls, and I think like considering all the stuff you have to do in this game and that you can do, it's impressive that they managed to fit all of them onto just the buttons that they did. But I feel like the one big one for me still, and I don't know if this is just like an issue I have with 3D space, is turning around items in 3D. So like what I mean by that is like, with Ultra Hand. So like if I'm trying to get something to point northwest, getting it to actually like turn, like say I find that an angle, I have to like get it to the right 90-degree angle first and then rotate it. And a lot of the time I would accidentally be doing it where, because the item was already at an angle, it like wasn't going back to the full 90 degrees, and then it wouldn't sit just right. And I think that for me was slightly frustrating.
Yeah, I can see that.
I agree with Jared in the chat saying I wish you could have done that with gyro.
I agree.
I think
as long as you could turn it off, because I would have been trying to move stuff, and then it's like moving around as my controller starts moving. Like I turn on gyro in Splatoon.
Yeah, I mean, Breath of the Wild kind of had that.
I only play Splatoon with gyro. That's where we differ, McDareth.
Yeah, most people do.
It's weird because like Breath of the Wild had that, so I'm surprised they didn't have that as an option.
Yeah. There must have been some reason as to why, like some development reason. Otherwise, why wouldn't they have included that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think just like it might have been a issue with like tech, just because like everything with like the fusion, like fusing things together, just because everything is always at like very specific angles.
Yeah.
I wonder if maybe there was an issue with that, just like because everything has like connection points. You can't glue whatever you want to wherever you want. There's very specific connection points where the glue can connect. So I do wonder if that was part of it.
Hey, that was the other thing too. Like, how quickly did you discover the connection point thing? Where if you just kind of hover your little item around the other item, that'll automatically sort of sit in the proper position. Because for me, I didn't discover that until like way late. So I was trying to be precise and trying to get it exactly on the top. And I realized, oh, if I just lifted the other item up a little bit, I'd see the little connecting tissue with the Ultra Hand, that it would fuse it together in the proper place.
Yeah, I noticed that very early on because I was trying to make cars, and I noticed like when you sit a car to the next to like a slab on the floor, the glue
Yeah.
will like raise up and connect to like the part where you want to connect the wheel instead of just
Yeah.
like connecting to the bottom of the wheel.
So I am curious then, you bring up the thing with the cars, like what were some of the other cool things that you guys created?
Oh,
I didn't make shit.
I made an
Oh, I'm
ATV.
very bad with it.
So I took
I would
it's
usually
like
just use it to break puzzles.
so you take like the springs and you put them on the bottom upside down so they're shocks, and you put a stabilizer on it, and so then it'll force itself to be at the same height no matter what, and but those springs will go up and down and compress like a car, like the shocks on a car. So later on, that's what I used in the depths. I would build that and put a giant light bulb on the front of it so I could see and then drive in the depths.
That's actually amazing. I never would have thought of doing that. That's cool.
I just like making winged cars. Just slap a load of the rockets and the wing contraptions onto what is essentially a car, so you can fly and drive.
And also flying feels so good. Like I feel like once you actually, and I'm sure you know this, like if you've been building winged cars, dude, but like once you actually get just the right wingspan and you're able to turn just the right way you want it, and like you're able to fly for an extended period of time with the batteries, it is such a good feeling. Just flying around and looking for things in the sky.
I want to mention real quick. I don't know if this is like you love this thing too. If there's one thing that I'm gonna like really miss going back to Breath of the Wild, it's skydiving.
Oh yeah,
Just like pressing
Yeah.
R and getting so much control in the air.
Especially when you have the diving suit equipped.
Yeah. That
See,
is
I don't think I even
fantastic
got
feeling.
all the stuff for the diving suit. I think I got one of those items and I just didn't find the other two.
I didn't find one of them, but I found the two. They're all at the mini games.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
you have to look for
skyway going
those.
through the rings.
Yeah, the islands that are like broken up going up with like a water pool at the bottom. When you look on the map, is always one of those because you have to dive down into it.
Yeah, you feel a great sense of control through the air when you have all three.
Yeah, because I totally forgot in like Breath of the Wild, like if you fall and you don't bring out your paraglider, you are just your direction is set.
Oh, yeah, you're done. Yeah. Yeah.
So it was just nice to have an alternative to just falling. And there's the clip I just posted. That's probably the most creative I got in the game.
Oh, let's see this. Hold on. I could probably pull this up on screen right now. Let me see.
I ran out of fans and rockets, and I had to get this stone to a guy for a quest.
Here, if I pull this up, I should be able to do this. Let me see. Add source. Screen capture.
Oh, I've seen people make similar things in one of the shrines.
Here
There's
we
a
go.
shrine where you
I
can
got
like
this.
make a sort of water boat contraption like this.
I'm
I
gonna make
haven't
this
seen
full
that
screen
one.
so people can see it. All right, here we go, Mike. Now it's playing on screen. Let's see.
It didn't work super well because every time you turn left or right, one of the wheels slows down or speeds up. So it gets super out of sync.
It looks super funny though. It looks like a little guy swimming, like a little frog car or something. You should put googly eyes on the front of it. Yeah. See the boat I was talking about earlier that has the what's it called? The little thing that you stick on front and just turns it into a fishing boat is kind of similar to that. The only difference is you don't have the giant paddles like how you turn the sleds into paddles on that thing. But the actual size of the boat is kind of the same. It's just fun to watch it like flail around and try to climb. It's just so fun to experiment in this game. I feel like there's very few other franchises that manage to actually have this same type of feeling. And I know we clowned on it. We talked about it on a previous Japan time about like how Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts was like this a little bit, where you could experiment and do fun things with your cars. But it's like, I never would have imagined that putting that into a Zelda game would not only feel good, but also would like feel natural to Zelda as a whole anyway. Right? Because like when I think of Zelda games prior to Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, I'm not thinking in terms of the gameplay and like using the gameplay to discover things. I'm just thinking of the tool set, right? You have like a bomb or you have an item,
Yeah.
and the item unlocks something that's on the world map. But now, literally, like, I feel like it's going to be difficult for me to go back to a Zelda where you can't experiment like this with the gameplay because it makes it so much more fun.
Yeah, I
At least
don't
for me
know how
personally.
they go where they go from here. Like, because I feel like they're gonna keep this like the open world formula. I don't think they're getting rid of that. But I don't know, like in terms of mechanics,
Do
how
they
do you
keep
get rid of this
building?
stuff?
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of the reason why this probably doesn't feel that out of place, and I'm not sure how much people have played it, but Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are the games that most closely harken back to the very first Zelda game,
Totally.
Yeah.
which was
Yeah.
much more of a kind of open world experience in the context of, the NES or the Famicom, and was a lot more kind of free form in the way that you could approach it. It didn't really, well, obviously, due to more modern game design sensibilities, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, while having more open-ended objectives, they still nudge you along in a certain direction.
Totally.
But the general sense of freedom is, uh, unlike any other Zelda game between Breath of the Wild and like the original Zelda game. So, in a sense, it's the series going back to its origins, but in a much more modern,
Yeah.
extensive way.
And you bringing that up, I think, is the perfect segue into me sort of saying where I think it's going to go from here. Because I think this version of Hyrule, like the Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom version, I think we are done with now. Like, as much as
You
I
think
would love
so?
like a third game, I do. I think as much as
Yeah,
I
I
would love
think
like
with
a
how it
third
ends.
game and we go to space or something,
I
like
actually think
I don't.
I think with
Well, go
how it
ahead.
ends, McDareth, I think that like sets up perfectly for like more tales in this specific world. Because like I think Breath of the Wild, they said like it's continuation, they put it on the timeline, but I do think not only gameplay wise, but I think like narrative wise, I think it's almost like a soft reboot. And so I
See,
don't
I've
Yeah, they
heard people
call
say
back
that.
stuff. I mean, do we want to? I put the
Yeah,
the
we
story
should. We
in.
should get into this.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
because
so
I
like
feel like on the topic of you saying it's like a soft reboot, right? Before we get into this, because this is going to be a huge discussion, I feel like I do want to say that in terms of where I think they're going to go with this format, like I'm so glad that Viram brought up Zelda 1 because I think, obviously the Zelda team, they've done remakes before. We had Ocarina of Time 3D, we had Majora's Mask 3D, Link's Awakening, right? We've had remake games before. I actually feel like I almost semi expect a Zelda 1 remake or a Zelda 2 remake in the Breath of the Wild engine. Like in this sort of expansive thing where
that'd
you
be
have the
interesting.
dungeons, because then that way you have the classic dungeons, right, where you would have those dungeons in the places they were in on those original maps reimagined, but then you would have that version of Hyrule to explore in the Breath of the Wild style. And they don't even necessarily need to do like the underground and the sky for all of those either. You could just remake that game with the map, have like all those nostalgic moments for the people who maybe grew up playing them, who by the time they probably end up doing that, those people will be in their 50s or whatever. But like the people that grew up playing those games, right, would then be able to be like, oh, I remember when you burn this bush in this way, you're able to unlock this thing. And going back to the very original demo that they did for Breath of the Wild, they showed off. This was at the GDC 2017, I think is when they revealed this. They showed off the original tech demo that they used for testing Breath of the Wild's physics engine, and they used basically like a Zelda 1 map for how things would naturally work in the world, where like if you burn this thing, the fire carries over to all these other things. And so I think they're already kind of thinking in that mindset of potentially revisiting those early Zelda games. And I also kind of feel like they're in a good position with Zelda as a franchise in the same way that Mario has like the 3D games and the 2D games. I feel like because they already have the top-down formula with Zelda games in the past, like we had, even recently, you had Link Between Worlds, you had the remake of Link's Awakening. I definitely feel like they're going to continue that format for 2D games in the future alongside the 3D games. But I feel like again, some of those old 2D games, things like Zelda 1 or Zelda 2, or honestly, even like if they want to just go for it and press the emergency button, remake Ocarina of Time again and do it in the Breath of the Wild engine. I mean, really, if they really want to do that and make a bunch of money, they could do that.
How would that even be possible?
Ocarina again. Well, you have the Hyrule Field area be open world a la Breath of the Wild.
I guess
and then
that
you
is,
have
yeah, they
all
could
the
do
different-
that.
Yeah, the Gerudo area would be open
Yeah,
world.
you
You
kind
have
of
the
take those
area
areas
leading
and
up to
connect them to
Zora's.
the map rather than having
Yeah.
like parts where it loads the next area.
Right. It would all just be naturally connected and fleshed out, and there would be
That's
towns
also
in the middle
the
on
craziest thing. Like looking at this game, I know we talked a bunch about Monolith Soft and Xenoblade One, but like how Nintendo scored with them, because playing this game, you can go from the Sky Islands to the depths. It does not load. Well, the
It's
depths kind of
amazing.
hides the
Yeah.
loading as you go down, but while you're playing, you're not
Right,
seeing a loading
yeah,
screen.
yeah.
It's just going.
Real quick, did anyone else here think when they first saw a shrine that they would just be able to walk in with no loading?
Yeah.
When
The
I saw
entrance
like
kind of
the
gives that
door,
impression.
yeah, I almost wonder, big speculation, maybe that's future proofing for some new hardware in the future?
Yeah, maybe we're like you walk in and then there's just no load. You just walk right in and you're
Yeah.
into the shrine. That would be kind of wild if they did that. All right, but now that we talked about the remake thing and all that other stuff, talking on that soft reboot format, the reason why I somewhat disagree that I think we're going to get like another direct sequel to Tears of the Kingdom is I agree with you, Mike, that I think they're going to continue from here for future Zelda games, but I don't think it's going to be the same Link and the same Zelda
You don't
again
think so?
with the champions. I don't. I think even if they were going to do something wildly different, like you go to space or something, I don't see them using this Link and Zelda again. I think it
see
would
that
be
that I
a
could see. They
continuation
go
from
to like the
here.
next
Yeah.
generation.
Yeah, I
Right,
don't necessarily agree. I think
Thank you, by the way, to Julia Stunts for the raid, and thank you to Zeph for raiding earlier as well. Appreciate it. But yeah, I guess the one thing I will speak on in regards to what I think the future could look like in terms of like story wise, and why I don't necessarily think this negates stuff that we've already seen. Part of me feels like what you get with the stuff with Sonya and Rauru, and even like the teases to Skyward Sword bits where you hear Fi's theme and they reference like her in the sword. They straight up say her. They don't just say like, they straight up are referencing Fi. To me, I took that, and you could disagree with me, and that's totally fine. I took that as Link and Zelda at the end of Skyward Sword, where they go and actually form Hyrule. I took that as they did not form Hyrule in their lifetimes, and that Link and Zelda had children, and Sonya is either the granddaughter of Skyward Sword Zelda or like the great granddaughter or something. But they basically formed Hyrule over generations, and that when the Zonai eventually came down from the sky, that is what officially formed Hyrule, right? Like that's the founding of Hyrule, the era that Zelda in this game goes into, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I linked the Historia from like the book. It's in the chat. I think I linked the reply
Yeah.
to it. You can go up to it. And that's like, yeah, the space between Skyward Sword and Minish Cap has Banishment of the Twilight, Secret Realm is Sealed, Kingdom of Hyrule founded. So it's like Zelda goes back to that time in between Skyward Sword and Minish Cap.
Right. Actually, I should pull this up. I should put this on screen so people can see it. But
Well,
that
we know
era
that
has always been kind of fuzzy for Zelda anyway.
You know, the founding of Tears of the Kingdom's Hyrule isn't the first founding of Hyrule.
Well, no, because we know of the stuff with the goddess Hylia in Skyward Sword.
And that's not the the one in the past isn't even that one. It's this
And Hyrule existed in Skyward Sword on the ground, but the people of Skyloft just didn't live down there. Like they went and eventually founded it. Hold on, I'm trying to find a good place to put this on the screen. I can't really, but here, I'll remove it.
when I'm talking about like soft reboot, I'm not necessarily saying like all the lore is just gone now. I'm saying like in terms of like the philosophy for how this series is going to be presented going forward. And I feel like at this current point, like I don't know how much you guys agree, but I think Breath of the Wild's incarnation of this series is connecting with more people than any other incarnation has before.
Oh,
Oh
no,
yeah,
I completely
because
agree. I mean,
the
you can see
story is
that
way
in
more
sales
fleshed
data.
out
Yeah.
within Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Like a lot of Zelda is kind of found history. It's like some of it they'll tell you, but like they had to come out and make a damn chart to explain how it all fit together. But like from Tears of the Kingdom
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild, you can understand the flow of what's happening.
I just think
Because
about like
why-
Age of Calamity and how like that was a Hyrule Warriors game based off a single entry and it carried
Yeah.
it. Whereas
Yeah.
like I don't know if like Ocarina of Time Warriors would be nearly as cool.
I think
And so
Ocarina of Time, Ocarina of Time, nostalgia-wise, I think for a lot of people, they would go crazy if they did that, right? If they made like
Yeah.
an Ocarina of Time Hyrule Warriors. But I think in terms of like zeitgeist and in terms of how many people are actually playing the games, you're completely right in saying that this version of Hyrule, like the Breath of the Wild, Tears of
Yeah.
the Kingdom version, is the one that's connected with the most players, period. That's not even a discussion. You look at sales numbers and sales data across the board, and like even taking into consideration like the Nintendo 64, like every kid who had an N64 pretty much had Ocarina of Time, but the install base for the N64 versus the install base for the Switch, like I think we're
Yeah.
not going to see the repercussions of this until the generation that is growing up with the Switch gets to our age. Like
Yeah.
the age that we were when Ocarina of Time came out, because the actual hardware for N64, it was like what 30 million they sold 30 million N64s. The Switch is 125 million right now. They sold as many N64s as they sold copies of Breath of the Wild, to put that in perspective. So like, and not everybody who owned N64 had Ocarina of Time.
Yeah. But just like going forward, I'm not necessarily sure if like they want to continue what they've been doing with Zelda as like so far with just like, you know, every generation gets a new incarnation of these characters.
Yeah.
I could see them doing more with this world. And I almost kind of really want it too.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see a world in which they go, okay, we're just going to continue this Link and Zelda story. But at that, well, I guess I was about to answer my own question because I was going to say, like, at that point, Ganondorf is now dead. Like, canonically, at the end of this game, clearly he takes an Oppenheimer to the
Yeah.
face. Like, Ganon is dead.
Yeah,
dead
that
now.
explosion, it
At
was
the
like,
end of
oh
this.
wow, I have never seen them blow him up like that
Never
in
in his
Zelda.
They were clarifying. Look, Ganon is done now, and oh man, while we're here, the Ganondorf fight is so sick. The Ganondorf fight in this game is this incarnation of Ganondorf is so scary and cool. Like, oh my god.
Yeah.
That whole end game sequence for Tears of the Kingdom, going from, you know, journeying through Hyrule, this version of Hyrule Castle, going back into the depths to reach Ganondorf's lair. Then, of course, all of the champions come with you. You're fighting that big horde of enemies. You go in, you fight Ganondorf by yourself, and then, of course, there's the huge sequence with the dragons in the sky. That end game sequence was one of the best end game sequences of a video game I've ever played. It was
So sick.
Yeah, it was
magnificent.
amazing.
So I don't know like if this means anything, but I figure it's worth bringing up because I mentioned it in another chat a long time ago. Tears of the Kingdom Ganondorf, until he gets the Spirit Stone, is the only Ganondorf that doesn't have some sort of forehead adornment like this.
Oh, interesting. Well, his adornment in this game is kind of the tear, right? That he eats at the end of the game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is he doesn't
Yeah.
have one
So-
until he steals
Right.
it from Rauru.
So do you think, like, lore-wise, just like a quick side thing, do you think, like, these Ganondorfs are, like, calamities Ganons, almost?
Yes,
That were, like, fully formed?
Actually, yeah, because there's a whole thing with Ocarina of Time Ganon, there's a whole thing with Ocarina of Time Ganondorf, existing before future Tears of the Kingdom Ganondorf, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's a destroyed castle town. There's a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And then, there's something in one of the books that says something about the calamity and directly refers to him, but I don't remember what it is.
Well, the thing is, specifically with that iteration of Ganondorf, right? Like prior to this game, which I think maybe another reason why so many people have that nostalgia for Ocarina of Time and like why Nintendo relied on it for so long. Like the Ocarina Ganondorf is the crux of the timeline. Like if we are to take into consideration that like this is a soft reboot, right? And that maybe there's like a convergence at the end, like because they did say when Breath of the Wild first came out that it is the furthest game in the timeline by like a substantial margin. They said it's like way, way, way in the future, which leads me to believe that the three timelines, right? The Spirit Tracks Wind Waker timeline, the adult timeline, the child timeline, and then the hero defeated timeline that we've seen like repeated through Historia and all this other stuff. I do kind of feel like there is evidence that those three timelines at some point in the far future converge and they end up in the same place, right? Because the Koroks exist on the Wind Waker timeline, and yet they are here interacting with Zora and Goron that are very clearly coming from the timeline of Ocarina of Time. And then you've got enemies like the Lynels and enemies like the classic, like the Wizrobes and everything that are from the classic, like, you know, original Legend of Zelda Adventure of Link timeline. And the Imprisoning War, which is referenced directly in a bunch of the games on the Hero Defeated timeline, we literally see happen in this game.
Really?
Yeah. So if you look at the Historia,
this is the Imprisoning War.
Look at the Historia, and when you scroll down, because Ocarina of Time, when it splits, the Hero Defeated one, it's the Seven Sages, Seal Away, Ganon, King of Evil, and then Imprisoning War.
Right.
And then this game shows that as well.
And that's always been referenced in every old classic Zelda game, but we've never actually seen it, and we never knew who the King of Hyrule was at the time, and they've always only shown them sort of in silhouettes. You've never actually fully seen it. So that's why I think, like, I don't think this is, I've heard people say it's a reboot, and I don't disagree that it's a soft reboot in terms of, like, where we are in the story.
Yeah,
like,
that's why it's like
but
that's why I mentioned
what I was gonna say about
but it's on the timeline.
Ganon
It's just like these two are far, far, far in the future on the timeline. Like I said, I think we're gonna see the Trident split from Ocarina Ganondorf eventually converge, and whenever they end up doing another one, like
the fucking quote here straight up says, the first one is this. I think it was talking. This is just talking about Ganondorf in general, and Ganon. The source of the darkness that has appeared time and time again throughout Hyrule's history. It's been called many names, from Great King of Evil to Calamity. Hibernating within a cocoon, it attempted to regenerate a physical form after Link awoke, but was forced to confront him in an incomplete state. And then it says, it is written that Calamity Ganon once adopted...
Ganondorf. Right.
What? Yeah. It is written that Calamity... It is written that Calamity Ganon once adopted the form of a Gerudo, and since he was the rare male born to Gerudo, was made king. But that wasn't enough for the man known as Ganondorf. He plotted to seize all of Hyrule, blah, 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 blah. Link beat him. His plans shattered. Ganondorf lost control, and his powers consumed him, transforming him to the Dark Beast Ganon. Blah, 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 sealed. His hatred of the hero and princess is legendary. He revived time and time again, only to be sealed many times over. Eventually... the Demon King Ganon became hatred and malice incarnate, holding a deep grudge against... Yeah, so what are they...
So what you just brought up, right, where it's like the sages are sealing him time and time again, that's literally in this game. Yeah. But we only see the original imprisoning seal. And I've seen people debate that, like, the imprisoning war that's on the Hero Defeated timeline is a different imprisoning war.
I think it's different. I think they're just using the same name.
I think they're using this name, and I think they're using this to retcon that, because we've never seen that imprisoning war ever. And if this is the version of Hyrule we're going to continue from, like, the whole thing with Zelda, right, is that, like, legends over time change. And so the imprisoning war was so far removed, and no one from the original imprisoning war that we saw in this game lived or existed in any of the games that existed prior to Breath of the Wild. We never saw that imprisoning war, but what we did see, like Zeph just brought up, was the version of Ganondorf that was the crux of the timeline split, that was the main Ganondorf in Wind Waker, who is the same Ganondorf on a different timeline that is Twilight Princess, who is the same Ganondorf that kills Link that goes into the Hero Defeated timeline. That is all the same Ganondorf.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
all the same
Right,
one.
because he's all Ganon, and like you brought up, he just was sealed on multiple different occasions, and this created all these weird splits in which, you know, in one of them the Hyrule is flooded, in another one, you know, Link explores Termina, and then you've got like Vati beaten revived.
In Wind
Twilight
Waker,
Princess.
he straight up says when the first time you see him is he says it's been a long time, so he knows
Exactly.
who you are.
And I think the explanation with the Zonai, because I think that's the one crux in all of this. So it's like, okay, fine. If you want to say it's the same imprisoning war, like why weren't the Zonai referenced? I straight up just think it's they didn't come up with them by that point in the story, and that moving forward in future games, we're going to retcon that stuff, and the Zonai are going to be present in, like, I definitely think that's a big reason why I think we're going to get remakes done in the Breath of the Wild engine. It's because I think we're going to see Zelda 1, Zelda 2, and Ocarina eventually recontextualized with Zonai lore kind of written in there to then be like, this is the definitive version of what happened then. Because at the time, again, like, they hadn't come up with those characters. They didn't know what they wanted to do with it. And again, like, if you think back even to when the timeline discussions were happening, like Miyamoto for a long time, leading up until I think it was like, what, Twilight Princess? It was around that time when he was finally like, all right, we'll start talking about timelines. For a long time, they were like, there's no timeline. What are you talking about? The games were all direct sequels to each other, right? Like, we had a contextualized thing in the actual booklets for the games of where these games took place. We had the original Zelda 1. Adventure of Link was a direct sequel. It said that straight up in the booklet. It was a different Zelda and it was a different Link, but it was a direct sequel. It was meant to take place after that game. And then in the actual booklet for Link to the Past, it said specifically it was a prequel to Legend of Zelda and the earliest on the timeline. And then leading up to Ocarina of Time, when that game came out, they said this is the earliest on the timeline. And then when Ocarina came out and there was the whole thing of using time travel, going back to the future, all the past, all this other stuff, and then Majora became the eventual, like, next game, right? And it clearly didn't match with anything that had been led up to that point in terms of the main series games. They realized, like, oh shit, we have to do something. And that's when the fans started coming up with their ideas for the timelines, and now we have an official timeline published by Nintendo that they approve of, which is the Hyrule Historia one. But the thing was, Hyrule Historia came out before Breath of the Wild. So they basically just need to do a reprint and tell us where in the far future Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom lie. But like I said, I think eventually, you know, like, child timeline, adult timeline, defeated timeline, I feel like eventually all get to the same point in the far future, right? Like, these are all anomalies, but eventually they all get to the point where Koroks exist on every timeline, Zoras and Rito exist on every timeline. Because, like, correct me if I'm wrong, in Wind Waker, wasn't the whole thing that Rito evolved from Zora?
Yeah.
So, like, but now Ritos and Zoras are just chilling on the
Yeah,
same
that's
timeline.
true.
Makes no sense.
So, yeah. So I think, again, it's like a convergence type of thing where eventually evolution's going to hit and everyone is going to live in the same world. The Korok kids from Ocarina of Time are eventually going to morph and turn into Koroks. You're going to eventually have the Kokori, are eventually going to turn into Koroks. You're eventually going to have the Rito being born, and all this stuff is going to happen. But because it happens way far in the future, and like you said, Zeph, these other Ganondorfs that have existed and been reborn time and time again, they're kind of like calamities, right? Like, the Ganondorfs that we've seen up to this point are essentially calamities. It's like the evil of Ganondorf leaking out and reincarnating in different ways. Or like the original
Isn't it like
Ganon, it's
the
same
curse
thing.
of demise, basically?
Yeah, exactly. Where because demise, that also doesn't negate what we saw here. Where demise could be the earliest villain in the whole series, right? Because he exists pre the founding of Hyrule. So demise setting out the curse creates the first Ganondorf, which is who we meet in this game, and then that Ganondorf being all powerful, you know.
Yeah, because I feel like he's
starts
like
leaking
the
out
first
and
thing
creates the
from
other
demise,
ones.
so he has like all of
Right.
it. That's what I would think, and then
Right.
like he's sealed, but because like that was like the weird thing, because like Ganon gets sealed and it just exists for like thousands of years. Zelda turns into a dragon, exists for thousands of years, but she's also kind of sealed until like she comes back later. So like a Ganon and Zelda can still exist because they're not there, almost kind of thing.
Right, they're just kind of dragons floating around doing their thing. Well, Ganondorf is under the castle, but Zelda
if you
is
also want a
flying from
simple
millennia.
Ganondorf technically didn't exist at that point, so there could have been another one because he was
right.
rebuilding
Reborn
himself
of-
in the cocoon.
Right.
If you also
were
want
you
a
saying?
simple evolution comparison as to why,
Yeah.
like, let's say the Zora and the Rito can still coexist. You
Yeah.
know, you have people who evolved from monkeys, but monkeys still exist.
Of
No, I
course.
mean,
Yeah,
like,
it's-
didn't it say specifically in Wind Waker that like Zora are extinct?
No, they transformed. They grew into Rito because
It
the
evolved.
seas became unsafe.
Oh, I
Right,
thought like they were
right,
gone, and then
No.
Rito were just the
I mean,
replacement.
they kind of were.
They
were
like
gone.
they basically
but-
are gone. They are
Yeah.
extinct, but because they transformed into a new species.
Right. And I mean, Wiglets and Diglets live
It's
at the
like
same
if
time.
What?
it's like Pokemon evolution almost.
Yeah,
It's like
right,
if
exactly.
it's like if humans literally evolved from monkeys, Pokemon style.
Yeah. So I don't think it necessarily I don't think anything really in Tears of the Kingdom negates anything that happened in a previous Zelda game. I think if anything,
You know what it did?
it's just they're trying to retcon stuff with the Zonai. That's it.
I do think it retcon one thing,
Huh.
unless
What-
Zelda was just wrong. Because in Breath of the Wild, when Calamity Ganon turns into Dark Beast Ganon, Zelda says some shit that's like, he's given up on reincarnation and
Oh,
has
yeah,
turned
no.
into pure malice.
We had a whole talk about that in the server.
Oh,
That is the most heavily mistranslated line in the game.
is it? No. I
Hold
hate
on.
Nintendo
What is
of
the line,
America.
then?
Let me get the actual. I found it. So before the battle, in English, he says, Ganon was born out of a dark past. He is a pure embodiment of the ancient evil that is reborn time and time again. He has given up on reincarnation and assumed his pure enraged form. And then in Japanese, it says, he's an embodiment of hatred and grudge that arose in distant antiquity and revives again and again, no matter how many times he's destroyed. This form was born from his... No. This is the line. This form was born from his obsessive refusal to give up on revival.
Wow.
Which is the complete
That's
opposite
like
of what
totally
you're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
That's why when like Tears of the Kingdom was first revealed, I was not convinced that the mummy was Ganon. Because I'm like, he's
Because of that line.
yeah, I'm like he's dead though.
No, Ganon was not
But
fucking
also maybe
depressed.
that line, thinking about it though in English, like what that could actually mean. What is the thing she says? It's like he's given up on revival and become pure malice.
Yeah, basically.
That doesn't necessarily negate what Zelda could have thought at the time, right? Because she had no inkling that Ganondorf was like his corpse was lying under the castle, right? Like they discovered that at the beginning of Tears of the Kingdom. So it could have been she just assumed this Ganondorf was the Ganondorf, and based off what she knows, is just like this is it. This is his final form. We're gonna wipe him out and seal him away, not realizing like Calamity Ganon in Tears in Breath of the Wild is essentially like a malice fart of the actual real Ganondorf under the castle. Like he's just a little bit of him seeping out. You know,
So
like
if
she could have assumed that because in her timeline, right? I'm assuming she knew of the other versions of Ganondorf that were from the past, right? Like she knew of Ganon
Yeah.
from the older timelines, and so she just assumed there's one Ganon. She just assumed that his revival under the castle or whatever is Calamity Ganon is the same Ganon, and
So-
didn't
so wait,
realize there's like all these other versions leaking out.
Wait, so if they never stumbled into that cave, would Ganon have just woke up, walked to fucking Gerudo people, and then just destroyed the world?
Yeah, I mean,
no,
had
I don't
not
think
walked
so.
in
'Cause
that
they had
cave
no
and
idea.
activated it-
Because I feel
And
like
they
he
had no
wakes up.
Rauru arm.
I feel like he wakes up because they're there. Like the Secret Stone responds to Zelda.
Right.
Oh.
Because Zelda has at that point, and this gets into weird like future stuff, right, and time travel stuff. But like Zelda at that point has been to the past. You know what I mean? Like she herself hasn't experienced that yet, but that history has happened already.
Yeah.
Where she was the sage present.
There's a
I
weird-
get
there's
the
a whole bunch
Ouroboros
of-
now.
The story has
Right.
a bunch of loops and paradoxes and shit. It's
Right.
weird.
Because
Yeah,
the whole
what's-
thing is
what's
like
one of
she historically was there at the battle with the sages. So when she shows up again unknowingly and sees Ganondorf under the castle, that is what reawakens Ganondorf because he starts like feeling the sacred stone. He feels like the power of the sacred stone or whatever. But again, she is unaware of the fact that she has already been to the past.
And also
Yeah,
the
she's
the
with-
Sacred
because
Stone
it's her
that
future.
the Sacred Stone that
Breath of
Ganon
the Wild
has.
Zelda will win. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say the Sacred Stone he has is hers also, because he steals the one from Sonya, but that's the one she takes with her to the past.
Right.
So it's like that stone is also connected to her. Also,
Is
if you
it?
Right.
I
yeah,
thought it was Raru's stone.
no,
So
because Raru's
whole
stone
thing-
is kind of like with the arm. He steals
this whole
Sonya's,
thing
and that's the
is
one on his
insane.
forehead.
because it creates a paradox thing, but not a plot hole where it's like Zelda travels to the past because of the seal on Ganondorf failing, but Ganon was only sealed because Zelda told someone in the
That
future
Link was gonna come.
that someone could beat him.
And
So
that's the other thing, right?
Zelda's in the present when the seal
yeah.
fails, and then she goes back in time, and then it all loops again and again and again and again and again.
Which is why the whole thing happens with Raru's hand, right? Is that like if his soul is holding Ganondorf down all that time, and he sees Zelda down there with Link, he's like, oh, this is the guy. And then you know what I mean? And so he's like, I can give my powers to Link, and then Link can go on to kill Ganondorf once and for all.
And also, when
means that shows why she was so confident in Link the whole series.
The whole time. Right, right.
Also, the coolest thing I think is because they take you right past that, like the not hieroglyphics, but like the murals on the wall from the start of the game as you go down to Ganon. At the start of the game, they're obviously bomb launch because you have no bombs. But when you come back, you can blow it up, and the other parts literally show Zelda in the past fighting Ganon with the sages. It shows Zelda with the Master Sword, and it shows Zelda becoming the dragon with the current champions.
Did they ever explain
had you had
where
bombs at that point in the story, when you were walking in the first time, you would have seen that on the back of the thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like that, like you said, it was like that was the history that was already written. Had they just discovered a little more, if they'd stumbled upon that before they actually get to Ganondorf, it would have thrown things into a tizzy. But then it wouldn't have happened. It creates a time loop again.
Since this is a paradox and things don't have to make sense, couldn't this technically be a new timeline that splits in the future? Because Ganondorf knew about the Master Sword.
Yeah, there could be
Rauru
one where Zelda does not go back.
Zelda was sent back. Yeah.
But it doesn't create a split though, right? Because Ganondorf has always wanted that in all the previous Zelda games. He's wanted the Triforce. And the thing is, like in this game, the Triforce is barely present in like the actual story. Like obviously they all still have the pieces of the Triforce, but it's not really as present as it has been in every Zelda game leading up to that, because that version of Ganondorf isn't the actual like true real Demon King Ganondorf. Like you said, Zeph, that version is essentially the same as like Calamity Ganon. Like at some point in the timeline, a version of Calamity Ganon is reborn into the Ocarina of Time Ganondorf, and that version of Ganondorf was so screwed up and did so many bad things that he screwed up the timeline and created all these other splits with like Wind Waker and all this other stuff. But again, those timelines eventually get to the point in history that create Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, where eventually after millennia, Link is born and will take on the true final Ganondorf.
Are there two Master Swords?
No, that's the thing. There's only one.
No, it's the one.
Wouldn't one be flying in the above the ground?
Oh yes, technically
there's a usable one on the ground.
But the thing is, you technically never see it, right? Because you're never up there till after it. But kind of,
so
if you think about it,
be there?
Yeah, it must still be there.
I was going to bring up. The thing I was going to bring up is that the Master Sword, she must still be up there with this version of the Master Sword, right? With Link's version of the Master Sword, but the whole history prior to Zelda discovering the ruins and Link discovering the ruins in Tears of the Kingdom still existed. So essentially there was like one version of history, which goes back to what Mike was saying with the soft reboot. There was one version of history in which the first version of the Master Sword went through everything, like Skyward Sword's Master Sword, right? Went through all of the games that have been up to this point. And that eventually it leads to Breath of the Wild with Link getting the Master Sword in the Korok Forest, and then technically leads to Tears of the Kingdom, in which Zelda heals it and reboots everything again. But Fi, it's still the same Master Sword because the Master Sword is broken and they directly reference Fi. So it's like Fi has gone through everything. And they already imply, like with the different armor sets, that those versions of Link have existed way in the past on this timeline, and that you could read into it as being like a fan servicey thing, but in reality It could be the garb of those Links from like 10,000, 20,000 years ago. That it was like, the cap of the wind or the cap of the hero or whatever.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that
So
fuck
that
with
this
Zelda
would
though?
still exist.
Knowing that her life is a loop.
Well, I mean, probably, but like that's this version of Zelda. But the other
Yeah,
Zeldas
but like
are unaware
no.
of that
The
the same way
fact
other
that
versions of Link are.
she was fated to fall in the cave,
Oh yeah,
to go back to the past and live until she was able to become herself. Like what?
but
Yeah,
realistically,
that's the Ouroboros on the cover.
Yeah, right. Even though it takes thousands and thousands and thousands of years or whatever to get back to where she was, though, and like it sucks for that version of Zelda who is an immortal dragon for thousands of years. Realistically, like the time in which she falls into the cave, experiences the stuff in the past, and then like swallows the stone and eats the forbidden jelly bean and becomes the dragon. Like that's not that much time. Like she's not with the sages in the past for that long before they have that fight. She is with Sonya. She witnesses Sonya die. She becomes the new sage of time. She meets with all of them. But that's really only like the length of one regular Zelda game. So she's still kind of like doing her own thing. And then she's just in that dragon form where she doesn't know what the heck she's doing for thousands of years. And then Link wakes her up. And now she's free to do whatever else she wants. But she was fated to be in that loop of being a dragon for like thousands of years, no matter what.
This does weird shit like the Pokemon Celebi movie where the Zonai create the Zonai made this advanced ass technology which the Sheikah based them on, but Zelda researched the Sheikah technology like a lot before the calamity, and then she got sent back in time, and she could have maybe helped the Zonai technology. So like it's like how in the Celebi movie, Ash created the Pokedex.
With Professor Oak, exactly.
Yeah.
Because Professor Oak traveled with him as a kid. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's the same type of thing, right? Where she researched this Sheikah technology that was inspired by Zonai technology that she was unaware was that technology.
That
and then
she
in turn
could have made
created the technology. Right.
That's weird as shit.
Yeah. But that's why it's cool. That's like, again, going back to what Mike was saying, that's why this works as a soft reboot, but it's not really a reboot because it still exists on the timeline. It's just like far future, and now they can kind of do whatever they want. But that's like, again, going back to what I said, I think why they're going to remake some of those old Zelda games. Specifically, I think Zelda 1, Zelda 2, and Ocarina, I think at some point are all going to be remade. Because again, the story of Wind Waker and Twilight Princess and Link to the Past, those stories don't change because they are all directly what happens after Ocarina of Time. So you don't need to know anything with the Zonai, or that doesn't need to be recontextualized. But the point leading up to Ocarina and the point leading up to Breath of the Wild does need to be recontextualized. And they're not going to need to remake Four Swords Adventures, and they're not going to need to remake Spirit Tracks, because those are already far into the future and kind of in their own worlds where they could do whatever they want with it. But Zelda 1 and Zelda 2 do kind of need to be recontextualized if they're going to lead into everything sort of existing and becoming what Breath of the Wild is. You know what I mean? Like, am I making sense in what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where I feel like Zelda 1 and Zelda 2, because that's like Ganon, I don't know.
Something weird, I think, involving Rauru and Sonya is that obviously they had to have some kind of offspring, but we'd never see it.
No.
But it's
that
like
child
obvious.
Is a kid. That child is a kid during the events of Tears of the Kingdom. The child has been born already. Right.
So like, I don't know. So that means they were important to history because they were some kind of heir. And I'm assuming the shrines are pretty evident. Like the Zonai and Hylians, or whatever the fuck Sonya is, are the, like, I guess the Adam and Eve of their people.
Well, they are. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, there's definitely a kid of them, those two specifically. Yeah. I don't know what they would have done.
That kid is probably.
Couldn't that kid have been an unseen hero, and that's why there were two Master Swords?
I mean, it could have been that too. It could have been that, or it could have been that child was the first king, like the first King Roam or whatever, or the first King Rauru or whatever, or the first like Zelda that actually exists, right? That like, and that's how the legend comes into being, because there was the Zelda from Skyward Sword that eventually has kids and has Sonya, and then that Sonya gets with this alien, and then the aliens come down from the sky, the Zonai, and they have a child, and that heir becomes the actual future of Hyrule.
So
into the other games.
So when you do, if you do all the shrines, there's a set in this game called the Ancient Hero, which let me pull it up, I guess. But it's like
it's very cool.
It's supposed to be like a Zonai almost form of Link, but it's like the question is where does that even come into play? Because
that comes into play after Minish Cap, before Ocarina of Time is where it comes into play.
No, because if they're the last Zonai, though, because like you're saying they had a child, then like the Ancient Hero could almost be the child of Sonya and Rauru, because it looks like a mix of a Hylian and a Zonai.
Right. Yeah. So that would be right. So it's not Minish. It's not Minish and Ocarina. I'm sorry.
So would that have been a Link?
Minish and Skyward. Yes.
Technically, yes. It would be a Link.
Yeah.
Because I know that if you wear that set and talk to Impa, she's like, comments,
oh, you look like,
that you look like the hero in the tapestry.
All right, I put it in a spoiler chat in Japan. Tell you,
we could end up getting we could get a game with that version of Link that takes place between Skyward Sword and Minish Cap.
That's crazy looking.
Which would be cool. Yeah, that is really wild. Yeah, that could. I mean, maybe that was the child of Sonya and Rauru. Yeah, the tail sticking out and everything. Hold on, I'll put this on screen.
It is weird looking.
Who haven't already seen it. It is super weird looking. Here you go. It's awesome looking though, with all the different beams and the Zonai technology and.
A lot of the new sets of this game are
the other cool thing about it too is like the red hair obviously is traditionally like a Ganondorf thing.
Yeah.
So it's cool that like that's part of his history too.
Is that meant to be like? What if? Speaking again, is that meant to be like a secret stone on his forehead?
Yes. So in the cutscene when the like puppet Zelda stabs Sonya in the back, that's when Ganon takes her stone and embeds it in his head.
But okay, wait. I'm still thinking, like, so if Zelda was a dragon all the way back then,
right?
Like, how far back? She got teleported into the far past. So, wouldn't the imprisoning war have to happen once at least without Zelda?
No, because it still exists on the timeline in which the imprisoning war happened.
Yeah, it's just Tenet rules.
It's just right. It's the same imprisoning war, just retold in different ways. But it's the same one. It's the same reason that, like, when you see the sages in Twilight Princess that put up Ganondorf for execution, they're not the same sages from the end of Ocarina of Time. You know what I mean? Like, they are, but they aren't.
And Zelda turning into a dragon is destined because it's on the mural.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just like, it's odd because Legend of Zelda before, like, because people with time travel, there's like two different theories people pass around that like you can never change your past. So like the kind of like how there's a split between the three because those timelines still exist because the things that happened. And then there's this one where it's literally you are directly affecting the past.
Yeah, so I feel like Zelda's always run on these rules though.
Well, yeah, I mean, Zelda's, I mean, so much of it since Ocarina has been time travel, right? Like, I mean, like, it's become a huge part of the series now. And so I feel like you're eventually going to have to get to a point where they try to clarify, like, one true thing. I just think, like, the Zelda fandom has now become much bigger because of Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. And even prior to that, there was a concerted effort on Nintendo's part in the lead up to Skyward Sword to actually make a real timeline. And so I think we kind of just need them to do another official update to the timeline to get the clarification of everything so we know exactly where they take place. But I do feel like future games will take place after Tears of the Kingdom. And I do feel like there is opportunity for other games, potentially maybe 2D ones, like in the classic style, to be on the timeline between Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild. You know what I mean? Like in that multi 10,000 year era, there could be multiple games that take place there with the traditional Link and Zelda that we've come to know over all these years. That doesn't necessarily go against what we learn in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, but now with the knowledge that we have about the Zonai, and now that like that is something that's now actively part of the lore of Zelda, I could totally see games existing in that 10,000 years between Skyward and Breath of the Wild that have allusions to Zonai in them. Like the Zonai are now forever a part of Zelda lore in the same way Goron, Zora's, Ritos have been. Korok,
Yeah, I think they're just gonna always be like anytime games mention like an ancient race but didn't say, it's probably gonna be assumed
Zonai.
it was Zonai.
Yeah. Or even like going back to Skyward Sword, right? And the whole thing with the goddess Hylia. How do we not know the goddess Hylia wasn't a Zonai? Because the whole thing was she was from the sky and brought them into the sky for safety. So
I remember that was
Hylia
like
could have been a Zonai.
that was like the initial speculation when we first saw like the ruin art of like the Zonai. I was like, oh, is that Hylia?
Couldn't the Zonai have made
Hylia could have been, if you really want to get weird with it, Hylia could have been Rauru's mother.
If you're talking about Skyward Sword, couldn't the Zonai have made those robots in Skyward Sword?
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, totally. Like the robots in the desert and the
big ass ship.
Yeah.
Also, small speculation, the robots in Tears of the Kingdom, they all have like that swirly green goo in them, which we've only ever seen associated with spirits of the Zonai. So like, are all those robots dead Zonai?
Oh, I didn't even think about that. They could be.
Because we see that with Raru's hand, and then also Mineru's mech.
Okay.
Oh, well, Minoru said that she made them.
The souls of the dead zone. So did Mineru just like create a zombie army of Zonai then?
Real fast. I googled just because I was interested Zonai before Tears of the Kingdom, and I found this big ass post.
Okay.
And there's a lot of shit.
I had been in the story the whole time. Here we go. Yeah.
Like there's a lot of markings and shit that are like too specific in pretty recent games.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Skyward Sword. Look at this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Twilight at Midna.
I remember people were like really thinking the Twilight's gonna happen.
Dude, totally. Dude, I'm looking at this right now. I completely forgot. Yeah, the Andros Godan boss in Wind Waker is totally a construct. 110 not even a question.
It's literally a construct, actually.
It's literally a construct. It's a green construct of the Zonai.
It has the eyes. Yep. Yeah.
It's the same color. It's got the eyes. It's got everything. Yeah. Oh, it totally is.
It has this. It's the exact same color scheme. It has the yellow.
Yeah, everything. So they have been here the whole time then. Yeah.
Even the blue, like when it activates in the other picture, is very like Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild when stuff turns on.
Twilight Princess activation, the Skyward Sword one, everything, yeah.
And that's honestly like that's a big reason why I would kind of want them to continue this incarnation at least for one more. Because like I think
connect some of this.
Not just that, but also like Ganondorf's gone, so we need a new reason to like have a game. Oh, wouldn't it be so cool to have aliens go into space?
I think it would be kind of sick if they were going to go the space route and you need to bring back another villain or an incarnation that isn't Ganondorf. Dude, just bring Vati back. It's been so long since Vati. We haven't seen the Minish in a long time. Bring back the Minish and bring back Vati. And
I was going to suggest
with them.
Like just as like a Zonai person. Just like someone completely disconnected from Demise.
Some alien bad guy would be super sick.
I'm connecting stuff in the comments too. You know how in Skyward Sword Hylia put the islands in the sky?
Right.
Yeah.
It says here in Tears of the Kingdom, if you do the stone tablet stuff, it mentions Zelda helping Mineru lift the Temple of Time off the ground into the sky.
Hylia's a Zonai.
There you go then. Yeah, Hylia for sure is a Zonai then. No doubt about it.
Confirmed.
This is so weird.
I gotta bookmark this Zonai had been in the story the whole time. This is so
cool.
good. Wow. Yeah, I'm definitely bookmarking this.
Was it put in the chat? I should drop it in there. Just in case they're curious. It's
Man,
usually
Zelda's
cool.
great, man.
It does so much storytelling without like it does like it has a main story and then it has like all this.
I love that too, because I feel like games that do that, specifically like I'm thinking of Metroid games in which they're not just straight up telling you the story and
You
hand
observe
holding you, and you observe it and you're discovering it, like it's environmental storytelling. I'm a sucker for that. And
There was
Metroid
a whole
Prime
video
is
like that
that.
in for Breath of the Wild where it was after Age of Calamity came out. A YouTuber was like showing destroyed landscapes in Breath of the Wild and then explaining when it happened and stuff like Fort Hateno and things like that.
That's so cool.
Well, since we're talking about it, we've talked about the story a lot. I just want to say I really loved discovering the story in this game.
Yeah,
I did
Like
I
too.
like.
every memory was such a treat.
I don't.
Dude,
A lot of people were saying that they thought the
creepy
memory
face.
should have been ordered, but I felt like
Yeah,
what their
I'm one of
goal
those
was.
people.
I felt their goal was that they wanted us to piece it together what was going on.
Yeah, and also there was an order you could follow if you found
Also, yeah.
the ruin.
Right,
Yeah.
the little map down there did give you the right order. It was just funny because like I went out of order, and so on like my fourth or fifth Tears of the Kingdom stream, I found the memory where Sonya gets killed by Ganondorf. So I was like, I was shocked. I'm like, who is this person? Why is she getting killed? What is this? And why is Zelda there doing this? Like, and so it made me almost more interested to then go find those other memories.
Bro,
When I
why did
find out
Ganon
she
make
dies
that
in the
face?
second one.
Yeah, that I didn't like that.
But
face was
in
horrifying.
Japanese, it was like kind of good because in his Japan in English, he sounds like a gruff, angry guy, but in Japanese, he sounds like a demon. So it wasn't
Just
that
psychotic
weird.
looking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I don't know why did he do that. It looked like Gmod.
Yeah, but I liked the story in general. I thought it was good,
Yeah,
and I thought it was a good way to build on Tears of the Kingdom's lore, and then also like retcon a bunch of stuff from old games and make it cohesive. I think I agree that there should have been a clearer way for the order for people, like as an option other than just like discovering that little area, which by that point you've probably already found memories before you even find that, you know.
yeah. It would have been
Um,
nice if like after you found your first memory, Impa came up to you and was like, "Hey, go to this ruin to see the order."
Right. Right. But otherwise, yeah, no complaints. I mean, I enjoyed the story just fine.
I think she
even
doesn't
finding
tell
it
you
out of order.
exactly, but I thought she said something like, "Oh, I'm going to this region next. I hear there's one there." So they kind of do that,
No,
but it's not obviously.
He
I don't
directs you
think.
to the ruins, but it's
yeah.
not like after you've gotten that first memory, you can go get the other ones. You don't have to go to the ruins and go follow her to
Yeah,
get the other ones.
I like followed her. Like I found the old guy standing on the rock and he was like, Impa is over here
Yeah.
looking at this tier, and then I did the tier and I went to the ruin and it literally has the order on the
Yeah.
wall.
Yeah, with me, it's like because I explored like the Rito area a bunch. So because I was going up and then right, I did that one and then immediately did the giant Ganon one. So like
wow.
the part with where Zelda, because I mean, because in that flashback you hear Mineru saying it's forbidden to do that, you'll lose your sense of self and all this stuff, and it's like, oh, okay, I get it. I like pieced it together
So that
kind of
was-
quickly
okay.
what probably happened.
I'm glad you brought that up. So that was the other thing when I was playing through this is when you get to that memory where Zelda dragonifies herself. There were so many people in my chat who were mad that I was getting hype in that moment because they're like, "What are you talking about? Zelda's dying. She's sacrificing everything." And
I
I'm
was
like,
mad.
"Bro, it's a Zelda game." I'm sitting there. I'm
Yeah,
like,
she's probably
"It's a
coming
Zelda
back.
game. Link is going to save Zelda. What are you talking about?" Like, I was hyped more than anything else, making the realization that like, oh my god, I'm pulling the Master Sword out of Zelda's head as she's healed this as a dragon for 10,000 years.
Yeah, like just her
that was way
sacrifice
more
even
hype
at
for me
that
than
point
anything.
is kind of, it's crazy to think about that she was willing to do all that because she believed in Link
Yeah.
that much.
Yeah,
I think at
yeah.
the end it was really cool when the dive was replaced with Save Zelda.
Yeah,
That was sick.
I also
That was so
love
sick.
I love that it's Link like getting to redeem himself from missing being able to grab her at the start of the game too.
In the beginning, yes.
And then at that, when the cutscenes are finally over, you get the quest complete.
Yes, at the
That
very
was
end
also
of the
super
game.
funny too. What like how they throw back to how in this game you don't take damage if you fall in water. They like are
Yeah.
falling just infinitely in the sky and then just splash into a little puddle and they're totally okay.
Yeah, Roger, I was watching you do that memory, and the only time I was just like, dude, what is he talking about? Is when you said it should be her new final smash. I was like,
It should be,
no,
it'd be badass.
no,
Are you
it's
kidding me?
bad for Zelda.
While we're here. Okay, since you brought it up,
I can see Ganon doing that for a final smash.
I think
Yeah,
for
Dragon
sure
Ganon would be fun.
next Smash game, Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf all have to have their Tears of the Kingdom incarnations. Even if it's a new character completely, like there is so much to do with movesets for these characters where you could have Zelda with the Sheikah Slate and the
Ganon
abilities
has
from Breath of the
fixed
Wild.
weapons.
Ganon can use all the stuff that he uses in this game and turn into a dragon for the final smash. And Link can use his Tears of the Kingdom moveset with Waru's arm.
Well,
and
the thing
like,
with
can have
Ganon
a side
is crazy.
where he
He's gonna,
straps.
he could turn into a dragon, and he has like the demise form.
And he's got the base form that you fight him in, where he's summoning the other weird calamity things.
Like the
and
Phantoms.
He's slicing with the samurai moveset. It's Phantoms, right?
Okay, I want to
he's
say with
slicing
that,
the
because
samurai
we
moveset
talked
with
about it a little
flurries.
bit. It is so, because I feel like a lot of other Ganons, like, yeah, they're warriors, but a lot of times they're like mages more than anything. This guy is just a warrior. Like, he has those spells, but he just fights you.
Yeah.
And it's so cool. He fights on the
can
same
fully rush
level.
you.
The fight's on the same level as Link. So you try to attack him, he'll do a dodge back to you. He does a 4-hit combo. He has charge attacks. Like, he just fights as Link would fight.
We might actually be looking at a world in which Link and Ganondorf both get downbeat counters with Flurry Rush. That could actually happen. All I want side B for Link to be strapping a rocket to a Korok and then smacking him with the sword and having him fly to the other side of the screen as a
Like
projectile.
gyroid?
So much fun, dude. That would be so
Sakura really did us dirty with the whole Zelda doesn't like to fight.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Well,
like
now-
what
now
Zelda
it's
does.
bad,
What are you
man.
talking about?
Especially now too, with Age of Calamity, where Zelda's whole moveset is using the Sheikah Slate. Like she could just do that. Use the Sheikah Slate abilities from Breath, because then that way you could have Breath of the Wild represented with Zelda's moveset, and then Tears of the Kingdom represented with Link's, and a new Ganondorf, and you could still have the classic Link and Zelda that we have already in Smash Brothers as
there's no reason not
representatives
to.
of this. No, you just have there's just like there's Toon Link and Young Link, you have Champion Link now. And instead of making the Link semi-champion Link like what he is in
Well, actually, this
Smash
would make
Ultimate,
sense because now
you just go backwards.
Ocarina Link would represent the past Zelda 3D
Right.
age, and this would represent the new one.
And they can even
Right,
bring,
so
like,
you
if they
have
want to keep
Champion Link,
it separate, they can even bring back
Age of
Twilight
Ti-
Princess Link even, and let Ocarina be the Majora's Mask young Link.
Or you could even call it like yes, right, exactly. You could do Ocarina of Time Majora be Young Link. You
Next,
could have
no
Twilight
matter what,
Princess-
next game's roster is Zelda filled.
Dude, Zelda is going to
It
be
has to be.
everywhere on the next Smash. There's going to be like 4 different versions of Link. It's going to be like looking at a Dragon Ball Fighter screen where there's 8 different Gokus. You're going to have like 4 different Links, all with completely different movesets, 3 different Zeldas, multiple Ganondorfs. It's going to be fire, man. I can't wait.
Throw Minoru mech on there. Why not?
Minoru Mech. Put
Minoru
Side
Mech
Down
could
in
be
there.
Zelda's final smash.
Make a playable
That's
Sora
a good
fight.
one.
Or
and
it
have
could
be
replace
Side Down.
the Phantom.
The Phantom.
yeah.
She built the
Oh,
mech instead of the
there you
Phantom.
go. Yeah, the mech could be the
Her
exactly.
and Mineru are chill, so
That's right.
it would be weird for her to use like Tulin, but it's fine for Mineru.
Also Zelda can use Terraco, the baby guardian from Age of
Or that would be
Calamity
a
too.
funny ass
Oh, yeah.
projectile or something.
That guy
Yeah.
screwed the timeline again.
Terraco.
Oh, yeah, he
right,
did.
exactly.
How that little
Messed
guy
up all the
screwed up whole
timelines.
timeline.
I was really hoping someone was gonna mention Age of Calamity in Tears of the Kingdom.
So okay, we're doing spoilers. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I didn't play Age of Calamity, but I hear it's like
Sure.
an offshoot. But I'm like confused.
Okay,
about
so
it.
what happens is Zelda had this little egg robot, and during the calamity that happens in Breath of the Wild, the egg goes back in time to warn them, and it splits the timeline.
Right.
Okay, so it's like
So there's a-
the child
timeline
timeline.
with the egg, yeah.
He goes
Okay.
back in time and
Realistically-
warns them, and also summons like allies from the future to come help. So like he summons like Sidon and all them, and they end up actually defeating Calamity Ganon right then and there.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
because they all show up and already know what's going on.
So like you said, it creates another branch timeline that begins with Breath of the Wild. Well, just
Yeah.
prior to Breath of the Wild. Right, exactly. Because that game is canon. Like Nintendo went out of their way to be like that game is canon to to Zelda. So
Yeah.
I feel like that is going to be weird. Like we're going to be looking at, you know, a Hyrule Historia timeline in the next 10 years. That's, like you said, going to have a branch timeline of Age of Calamity before we get to Breath of the Wild, which is kind of interesting.
How
Yeah.
are they dealing with Mummy Ganon?
But that whole, I mean, they could just build off of that and do another, like they could do a Tears of the Kingdom Hyrule Warriors type thing that takes place on the split timeline in which they actually beat Ganondorf in the past. You could do that.
That would be crazy. That'd
be wild.
I'm
They could
surprised
call
they haven't made
it
more
Age of Imprisonment.
spin-off games where it's another timeline, but it's like short form.
Yeah. I would love that.
Play as Rauru?
I would love more spin-off games coming from the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom era. I think there's a lot of cool potential there.
We don't know a lot of stuff still, like what we know from Age of Calamity that the original king was strong as fuck, but he didn't do anything. in Breath of the Wild, he was just like a ghost for 2 seconds, and then he goes away for the rest of the game. I guess that's why he was there, because he was strong.
Yeah.
I don't.
There's
Well, I
just
guess
a
would it be
lot of
implied that
weird
he
stuff.
fell in the Calamity then, since he was just there as a ghost? Maybe.
Yeah. No, he yeah. It's implied he.
Well, King
he
does
died,
die. Yeah, he does. Yeah.
like everyone else, but
Mhm.
it's just like weird because he's such a imposing and strong figure, and he's just gone.
He's also like one of the best characters in Hyrule Warriors Age of
straight
Calamity.
up.
He
When
is
he's swinging the
crazy.
giant broadswords around and stuff, and he switches to the old man form with the axe. He's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, McDareth, if you haven't seen it, like the cutscenes from Age of Calamity are definitely worth a watch.
Oh,
Yeah,
for
there's
sure.
like
I'll have
as
to go
high
watch
quality
those.
as Breath of the Wild cutscenes.
I would also go out of my way to say that I think, having thought about it more and having played a lot of Warriors games, I do feel like, despite people kind of being soured on how the story ended up with Terrico, I think that game as a Warriors game is like the best Warriors
Oh my
game.
God,
That's,
yeah,
the only
it-
that's
like,
straight
without a
up the
doubt.
only Warriors game I've beaten.
I think it's like
Like,
one of the
I-
best games on the Switch.
Because I've played like all the Pirate Warriors ones. I've played all the Fire Emblem ones. I played, you know, even some of the older Dynasty Warriors, like in the PS2, PS3 era, and it like wipes all of those games.
Yeah.
If this upcoming Switch hardware updates old games, I really hope Age of Calamity gets it.
Yes, get like an FPS thing, evens
Yeah.
things out. Yeah, that would be great.
That game, like, it's cool in a lot of ways, but for me, it just suffered a lot.
It's hard to play for some people, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
sure.
like camera and frame rate issues. Like, usually I'm fine with faltering frame rates, but like, it happened in far too much abundance in that game for my liking.
See, I'm somebody who isn't normally bothered by frame rate, but even then, I could totally tell. Like in sequences where you're fighting a bunch of bokoblins at the same time, and all of a sudden, like the first time it happened, I thought it was meant to happen. Like I thought it was how Link was supposed to use his attacks, like that things were supposed to slow down a little bit. I thought it was an effect, and I realized,
It's
like, oh
just
no, it's
an
actually just the
insane
game
amount of hit
chugging
stop.
along. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Man, Tears of the Kingdom's great. Anything else you guys want to touch on while we're still here? We've been going for like 2 hours now.
I just want to say, like, one thing that I really love about the experience of playing Tears of the Kingdom is I think about a lot of games and how a lot of games will put you in the boots of a character who is like, you are living in the world that they live in, but they know the world, but you don't. And you have that
Right.
weird disconnect. And so, like, what was great about this experience is, like, once you drop into Hyrule, it felt like you were home. Like, you knew where everything was. And that was just, like, a really cool feeling you don't get into a lot of games unless it's, like, a nostalgia, like, level or something.
Bro, why was
There were
Terry
a
Town
lot
the
of
last
people that
place on
should
the
have
map I
definitely
went?
known. Like there were some side characters that knew Link, but there were other ones where I'm like, you should really know who this guy is. Like,
Yeah.
when you're talking to them in this game.
Like, Hestu, like, come on.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I
exactly.
could see I could see Hestu nothing. He's stupid. He probably doesn't even care when you talk to him.
Oh, I was so mad. I went to the house and I was so excited to see, like, the picture you get at the end of the Champion's Ballad
Oh,
in
yeah,
your
yeah.
house.
And Zelda takes it down.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Come on.
She's like, it's my house now, man. Yeah, I'm taking down your stuff. That was funny. Yeah, where you go up to and you walk to the house and it's like, wait, Zelda's house. What is this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's cool you
I
can
was
get the
so
hair tie
mad.
there though.
At least,
You can get
you
the
know, Link got some because they only have one bed in that house, and they
And
call
his
it
hair
Zelda's
tie's
house. And his hair ties there. So like, canonically, this Link and Zelda, they're a thing.
He gets a new house. That new house feature is great. I wish there
That
was
is
a roof
also super
though.
fun.
Why were
You
there
can
no
make-
roof pieces?
I made a rooftop garden. So all you do is you build the second, you use those blocks to create a third block on top of the second level, and you can make like rooftop gardens and rooftop pools and stuff.
Oh, I was just talking about like an actual like roof piece.
Oh,
like
you
a
mean like a
ceiling-
slanted
yeah.
roof or something?
Yeah,
I
because it
gotcha.
looks like Minecraft day one house.
Yeah, definitely.
But it was very cool. I love all like the being able to like stick your house together. That was a lot of fun.
I did
also-
love
God, I
that
love-
it kept your horses. I thought that was such a nice
Yeah.
touch. You go to the stables and the
Yes.
horses you spent time on are just there.
Yeah.
I also love Terrytown. Like the Terrytown side quest to me in Breath of the Wild is probably
That was
one of
the
the best
highlight.
things about the game.
Yep.
Where like I said, I recently went back and replayed all of Breath of the Wild this year in between while I was playing Tears of the Kingdom because I didn't want to tempt myself and play it off stream. And I did all the dungeons, collected the stuff in the shrines that like I felt like I wasn't trying to go over 100% because again it was a replay, but I made a point to do Terrytown stuff again because I wanted to like
Well, now you can see their kid.
and then see their kid and exactly and like see how everything grew over the course of these years.
It's so
And it just
funny how
makes-
much his daughter likes him.
Yeah, exactly. The daughter is such a fun character. All the son characters were all great, I thought.
Yeah.
It's just such a cool little environment to like literally see you build it out of nothing from Breath of the Wild to then see it be like a flourishing mining construction town is really, really cool.
Yeah, that's like it. Their influence just stretches all over Hyrule.
Yeah.
Did one quick question? Did you guys also skip every single puzzle in the Goron dungeon?
No,
No, I think I did them.
I just flew around.
Yeah. I
I
think
did a couple of
You
minecart
can
things.
bypass everything.
I did water, wind, Gerudo, and then fire. I did the fire one last. And I did the first half, and then I realized, like, oh, you could just sort of ascend up and make a motorbike and go through the rest. And at that point, I had a bunch of stuff I was streaming that week, so I ended up just, like, flying through the dungeon. But it didn't take away from it at all for me. It was still really fun to explore, even skipping some of those levels and skipping some of the minecart stuff. Because the actual layout of the dungeon itself, like I think the idea of having it in the depths was so cool, and especially having it for me be the last one, like instead of it not being in the sky or being on the surface, like the Gerudo one, like having it in the depths, I thought was a neat touch.
So what was your favorite of the temples?
Ooh,
The lightning one for sure.
Yeah, I like the Gerudo one.
That one actually felt like an old school.
Yeah, it felt like an old school Zelda dungeon.
I liked that the Gerudo one started with the boss battle. It was kind of cool. I think for me, it's got to be the Wind Temple. I think it's the easiest of all of them, but I think that nostalgia bomb of hearing Rito and Rivali's theme and Dragon Roost, and also the concept of it being on this giant like Norse Viking boat flying in the sky was just really cool to me.
Yeah, I did that one first, and I was actually kind of disappointed by it because I heard people like going into like the dungeons, like the dungeons, like it's a return to form. They did so much better this time, and like the climb was amazing, and the music was amazing. But as I was playing it, I was just like, this shit is just a divine beast.
It felt
It's just
I guess
it's
it's still
exactly like a divine beast.
Yeah.
Which I loved. I actually am like I feel like I'm in the minority that like loved the divine beasts. So like I didn't mind that, but it's just like it didn't feel like a classic Zelda dungeon.
I liked the Divine Beast just fine, but I think the thing that like made me dislike them slightly was the fact that they were all themed the same. I think something as simple as like making a fire temple and having things themed around that, or having it be like themed on a boat or themed on whatever. Like essentially all the dungeons in all the Zelda games are just solving puzzles, getting keys, opening doors, whatever. It's the same thing. It's just how you skin it and how you portray it. And I think because they were all basically like the theme was giant robot beast that you're inside of. And this one, they just changed the themes to be more like traditional themes. It made them stand out a lot more. But even these dungeons, like it's, unlock 5 locks to open up the fire temple and fight Goma, do the 6 things or whatever in the water temple to create the water to wipe away the sludge. It's like they are all kind of a similar thing. It's just the way that they actually make the minute-to-minute gameplay in those moments and the way they theme it makes it better.
I also feel like
I
because
think,
the sage is with you there, it gives you that old feeling of, oh, you need this mechanic to advance the dungeon, like the older games.
Totally.
But now it's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
you don't have to go in a set order because they give it to you.
I think
Yeah,
they would have added like so much to it if there was just like a mini boss or like a small gauntlet of enemies you had to do in the middle of the dungeon,
sure.
and then you continued through the like next half or whatever.
That would have been cool. I would have liked a mini boss.
I do think like just in general though, I think this new design of Zelda, it's very much about like get in, do an activity real quick, and then immediately get back out into the open world.
Totally.
Like that's why I think like the dungeons are probably like that short. Is they want like the open world is the game.
And see, with the caves, like you brought up earlier, I think because the caves exist, I wasn't really missing. Like I felt like
Yeah.
five. We essentially there are 5 dungeons in this, right? You have like Hyrule Castle, kind of is its own dungeon, and then you kind of, I guess, have the Spirit Temple as a dungeon too, with like 4 mini dungeon rooms. But like, there's the 4 main dungeons, and then Spirit Temple and Hyrule. So like, basically 6. You have 6 of those, and all the caves and all the shrines. Like I was not missing dungeons in the classic sense in the slightest
Yeah.
playing through this one. Like I feel like there was enough variety and enough big areas that I was exploring where I didn't feel like I needed to break it up with a traditional, Ocarina style
Honestly,
dungeon.
in a similar way, Viram, do you want to say something before you go?
Oh yeah, Viram's got to go. It's bedtime over by you.
Nah, not really. I've said all I want to say.
Okay.
Well, Viram, thank you for joining us. Always appreciate it. Get a good sleep. And we'll be talking to you on the next Japan time.
Take care, lads.
Yeah, have a good night.
See you later.
What I was gonna say, similar to what you're feeling about the dungeons, I actually felt like 2 things, like the shrines and the Koroks, felt like weird carryovers from Breath of the Wild in this game. Just because, like, the Sky Islands and the depths and the caves almost feel like replacements for it. Like, the map activities, and they're honestly way more interesting in my opinion. I was not super into the shrines or the Korok puzzles this time around.
I think a lot of the shrines this time around were not even really like shrines. Like you do something in the
Yeah.
overworld and then you
Oh my
walk in and they
God.
give you a reward. There were a lot of them like that.
I talked to McDareth about this. Like, there are 3 types of shrines. There's the, you walk and you get a reward.
Right.
There's the battle shrines, which are actually really good. I actually really like the
Those are
battle
awesome. I
shrines
love those.
this time
Yeah.
around.
But
It's
they
so much
take
better
all
than
your
just
gear.
like going inside and seeing one guardian and killing it. These
Yeah,
are so much
agreed.
better.
Way
And
better.
then the puzzles, which for the most part split into 2 categories of scale this wall or build this thing.
Yeah, that is true.
There are so many shrines where it's just, hey, you're in a room, scale this wall.
Yeah, when Mike and I
was not
talked
into
about
that.
it, I didn't even cross my mind that it's kind of that formula most of the time.
It is for sure. I think it's just that it's broken up over the course of hundreds of hours of gameplay and you're doing other things that you don't really
Yeah.
notice it as much, but that is totally true.
So yeah,
But I mean, that was
I remember.
that was kind of the case with Breath of the Wild though too, because I just recently replayed it, and you had the battle shrines with one guardian,
The battle
or
shrines
you
in that,
had
yeah, were really
right,
bad.
or you had some type of puzzle that was one of 4 things that was revolving around your Sheikah Slate power. I mean, it
I
was
just feel
still
like
kind of the same way, but they varied the puzzles, I think, in a way that this one didn't. Because, like you said, a lot of the ones in this one were like scaling something or going across something.
yeah, I just feel like there were so many shrines in this game where like I walked in and immediately knew what I had to do.
Yeah.
Whereas like
totally.
in Breath of the Wild, it took me a little bit sometimes because it's like, oh, I have to cryonis the wall, but not here. I have to put this electricity thing here so it goes through the current
Yeah.
or whatever. Like, I remember when before Tears of the Kingdom came out, I was speculating that the shrines would have used the Sheikah Slate with like Zelda Underground or something. And I said that because I felt like Tears of the Kingdom's abilities at a glance didn't seem great for like the puzzle box environment the shrines were. And I still kind of feel that. Like, the new abilities in Tears of the Kingdom are amazing for open world traversal. But I never ended up enjoying them for, like, shrines or even, like, some of the dungeon puzzles.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Like, with as much content as in the game, you know, you're not gonna love everything.
Yeah, no, that does not like drag down my impression of this game at all.
No.
Like, it is a huge game. I'm not gonna knock it for like a couple of elements. Yeah.
Really was good. Any last minute thoughts, McDareth or Zeph? Because I'm also kind of done at this point too.
I'm good.
We've exhausted a lot
I
of
think
stuff.
we got everything. It's crazy. Like I said it already, but the hardest part when you're a sequel to something that was a big success is how do you ever top that? And the fact they did it so splendidly is just amazing.
So then what do you think is actually next then? Do you think it's going to be a 2D Zelda? Do you think it's going to be like a top-down 2D
I think they'll probably do like
a remake?
A remake as a holdover while they're building the actual next full game. Maybe they'll get a side studio to make it. But like, I feel like there's no way they go away from this formula. But I don't know if they're gonna put it with the same Link, the same Zelda. I feel like they might explore themes they touched on here, but just go further with because like when Zelda says, "I'm gonna devote my life to ensuring the peace of our land is eternal," it sounds like that is the capstone for like, okay, they have succeeded, their story is done. That's what the theme I felt with how it ended. So I feel like they're going, whenever they go again, I don't know how far ahead they're going to go. But I feel like there's going to be like one Zelda where it's actually a happy ending for these two. Just like down the line, things will turn for the worst again. But like a lot of the Zeldas is like, technically, yeah, it's a happy end. But then you see the next game, it's like, okay, well, I guess it wasn't so happy. Because like stuff goes bad real fast.
Yeah, I guess for me... Oh, go ahead,
After
Seth.
Ocarina, it just straight up says that they needed him to come back, and he was like, nah. I'm in Termina now. I'm lost.
Wait, did he really just leave?
Yeah, because he goes back to the child timeline and he stays there. No, this is
he doesn't go back to
Termina. He dies.
He
lives his life and dies. Yeah.
He's
he lives his life, but he's still lost in the woods. Right.
He gets lost in the woods and dies at some point.
Yeah. And then in Twilight Princess,
like,
the guy that teaches you in Twilight Princess is implied to be that Link from Majora's Mask.
Right.
I think it's really messed up.
Game where adult Link, prior to him becoming a Stalfos, I would love to see adult Link in Termina as a game. Because Termina is such a weird environment that's so unlike anything else that's in any other Zelda game and so much darker that I think an adult game in that timeline would be sick.
I think it's crazy that the probably most famous and popular Link has the worst end out of them all.
Yeah. Like
maybe the worst life in general.
He becomes a Stalfos because he regrets that no one remembers him as a hero because he prevented everything from happening.
It's wild.
So he did what he was supposed to do, but because of it, no one knows who he is.
He lost his entire childhood, basically.
He dies in one timeline split. Yeah, he also... Yeah, it does kind of suck for him.
He has the worst life out of all the Links, probably.
Well, the only thing is that if he becomes an adult in the Majora's Mask timeline, he could just go hook up with the farm girl, who was always cuter than Zelda.
Honestly, I'm shocked they haven't touched on fierce deity because it's obviously like Ganon versus Link type deal, but they just never. Yeah.
Future game, man. They could always do something with fierce deity.
Like in Japanese, I think, right? It's like demon god is what it's called in Japanese, instead of fierce deity.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like.
Oh my god! I just thought of something.
Huh?
I literally just thought of something. Mike, you were mentioning earlier bad guys in space as a potential future game. Dude, Majora's Mask, the boss was literally the moon.
Oh yeah.
What if they have Majora? Bring Majora back.
Moon kids and stuff.
Dude,
honestly, Majora is probably like the most popular villain besides Ganon. It's surprising they haven't done anything with Majora since that game.
Dude,
he's an ancient evil. He can come back. You can bullshit something.
He could be on the moon or something. Exactly. They could just do whatever. They go to space and they fight Majora, dude.
But the whole thing is that I think people really liked how he looked on Skull Kid. What would the mask go on?
Well, like, what if he just resurrects Majora himself to see actually what Majora looks like?
You fight Majora on the moon in Majora's Mask, like the actual weird Majora's Wrath or whatever. You could have it be that, like, you could retcon it where Majora, because the whole thing was like an ancient tribe.
Majora was a Zonai.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Exactly. It was an evil Zonai. Yeah.
Honestly, and all the Zonais have masks. They all have masks in their their uniform. Actually, honestly, that would be kind of cool.
They could write him as a Zonai. That's fucked up.
Dude, Majora could be retconned as a Zonai. Would be so clean. Like just an evil zone. Oh man,
I imagine
want
just
that.
being on like an open world Breath of the Wild style, and the moon is just slowly coming down.
Oh,
That would be so
that would
cool.
be so sick. That would be so sick. Oh, I want that. I want that so badly. All right.
Cool game.
Well, cool, awesome
Yeah.
game. Thank you guys for joining us for this very special spoiler cast. We really had a good time with this one. Greatly appreciate it. And I guess until next week, we will talk to you guys later.